order here tonight, so would you please rise, pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We have called to the public. Is there anyone who would like to make some comments or on anything that is not on the agenda tonight?
Now, we've had to be discussing these things throughout, that's on the agenda. So I would like to bring some stuff forward now and call to the public while you're discussing these things, so you guys can question them.
We'll see how that works,
Okay.
depending on what the time frame is here to get everything done. We do have a public hearing tonight, which we have to go through.
Okay.
Kurt, I have one very quick question.
Sir, go ahead, sir.
It's been a while since we asked about the status of that M2 rezone request. Do you guys have any kind of update on that?
We still don't have anything so far on that. There's not been any movement by the developer, as well as there has not been a request to continue on from where they were. So
Okay.
we will probably give it a couple more months yet before we do anything in regards to forcing the issue with them.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but
At some point, would it just expire and they would have to reapply?
Usually in a year.
A year, okay. All right, thank you.
would it be quick and easy to ask you to just summarize what that was pertinent to?
Oh, yes. Originally, we had a request to rezone an area over here for the asphalt plant.
Yeah, okay.
And that request was withdrawn, and it
Okay.
is still, it's in inactive status, I guess is what you call it right now.
The special land use application was withdrawn, the rezoning applications have not. That's what's still on the table.
Yeah.
We have not had any contact with
Yeah.
any kind. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else from the public? Okay. I would call for the approval of the agenda. However, I'm going to move up a piece of new business, and that's election of officers. So that will be the first thing we address here. And the reason I'm requesting that is that Dan Stickle, who was the chairman of the Planning Commission, has resigned. So he's no longer on the Planning Commission, and I want to publicly thank him for his service to the Planning Commission and the work that he's done. So we are in the process of electing a new chairman plus the officers tonight. So I would request that we approve an agenda that moves election of officers up to the first item of business. We have a motion to approve the agenda with the changes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll move into election of officers. First thing we'll do is we will open nominations. The current officers right now are Dan Stickle was the chairman, I'm the vice chairman, and John Ward is the secretary. I'm assuming, John, you want to stay as the secretary?
Sure.
And I wish to stay on, at least temporarily, as the vice chairman. I cannot assume the position of chairman because the ordinance prevents me, because I also sit on the board. So normally in a situation where the chairman resigns, the vice chairman takes over and they just replace the vice chairman. Unfortunately, that can't happen, so that's why we're doing this tonight. I would also entertain a nomination for Rich Erickson as the chairman of the board, myself as the vice chairman, and John Ward as the secretary. Somebody want to make that?
Can I do that?
Yes, you can do that.
Yeah, I'll make the motion for Rich Chair said to be chairman, Kirk to be vice chairman, myself to be secretary.
Okay, I have a motion to accept the slate of officers that are currently serving, and including Rich. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Then by acclamation, we have a new chairman for the planning commission and the 2 present officers. So I will pass the gavel to Rich.
All right, so we'll move to approval of minutes where there is none in the old business. I don't know if we did receive some updates from the Lake Urban application, but I don't know if we've had time to get a review done of that or not, Zach, or if you have any comments. Was early this week.
I can give a quick introduction. So this has been before this body a couple of times. There have been extensive reviews, but they're directed primarily at the parallel plan. And so for those of you fresh to this body or to the audience, the request is for planned unit development, which is a tool used in planning and zoning and authorized by the Zoning Enabling Act, where project that provides recognizable and substantial benefits can receive regulatory flexibility with respect to lot lines or setbacks or lot areas or number of lots. And you guys have an entire section of your zoning ordinance that speaks to this. It's a residential project. I'm going to say before last month, I received a plan that had a number of issues in there. I shared the comments to the applicants, and my recommendation was to wait to address those issues in the site plan, and I believe you guys got the comments, right?
Yep.
It appears that a lot of them have been addressed. I've only done a quick review of the site plan since it was received. There are a couple of items that this body can kind of make decisions on or provide guidance to the applicant, but it appears very close or ready for prime time. So the couple of things that you can provide guidance for or discuss today would be the scale. So the plan sets are drawn at 150 feet to an inch. Your zoning ordinance requires 1 inch to 100 feet as the maximum, but you can provide a waiver for that. And the idea is that you want to have it at a scale that you can figure out what's going on. If it's the scale is too big, you can't see what's going on. So I guess the question to ask yourself is, when you look at the plans, can you get a sense of what's going on and where things are? Again, that's something that you can do a waiver for. Another one is showing the location of existing structures within 500 feet of the site. The applicants have said that they will show those on the final plans. And your zoning ordinance doesn't necessarily call out things that have to be on preliminary versus on final. It's all kind of mixed together in a goulash. So if you guys believe that you need to know the location of adjacent buildings as part of your preliminary conceptual review, you should let the applicants know that. Otherwise, they've committed to providing that as part of final review. Or you could also grant a waiver for that, or at least grant a waiver for preliminary site plan. A couple of other things. Development impact statement hasn't been provided. Now, those are generally done as part of final site plan review, but because of the nature of the planned unit development, where you're balancing those recognizable and substantial benefits, it's not uncommon to have those front-loaded in preliminary review as part of the conceptual plan. Same thing, impact assessment and traffic impact statement. It's not specifically required as preliminary, so you guys have the option to require it as either preliminary or final. The applicants have said they're in communication with a traffic engineer. And they noted that no test wells have been done, but that would be something that could be done at final site plan. We gave comment about additional landscaping where it's adjacent to existing residential properties. Now that's, how to phrase this. So my experience has been whenever you're putting anything in new next to existing uses, there's some anxiousness there. And so we always raise ways to try to address some of the potential concerns, including screening. And my reading of the tea leaves has been part of the concern is being able to see the impact of this. So the suggestion was where it's close, make sure that there's screening so that the folks who are there won't have to see the new stuff. Now, they are residential uses next to residential uses, so they're generally compatible. So it's not a requirement, it's just a suggestion, throwing spaghetti on the wall, if you will. They have noted that they've added street lights. Street lights aren't required unless you guys say you'd like to have them there. They previously said that they're going to put sidewalks in as part of discussion that came from this body. So those are the things that you can discuss and provide direction for the applicant. Otherwise, based on the comments they've made, the site plan appears very ready for preliminary. And again, preliminary is the general concept. There will still be a final site plan approval where a lot of the details, extra details are sorted out. And I suppose one of the first questions I'm going to get, I harken back to Jimmy Carson with a little card on his head there, is the access, followed by the number of units. So the language in your PUD article starts really strong where it says planned unit development shall be located, and then it gets very weak where it says so that they can have access from a primary road. It doesn't say they must have access from a primary road or they can only have access from the primary road. So the language, it starts strong, but then it provides safety valves, or release valves, I guess. So our reading of it is the language doesn't necessarily require access from a primary road or only access from a primary road. The proposed plans do have access for one of the phases from a primary county road, and the other from collector, I believe it's classified as. The other thing, if you look in the private road section, the standards say you can't have more than 30 dwelling units if you've got one access point. So for those of you who remember a whole month back, I know it's hard for me sometimes, previously this body has interpreted having islands that go the full length of that first road segment as providing 2 access points. Again, the rationale is that if one side is blocked, emergency personnel have another avenue to get in. So both segments of the road have to be wider than just a single lane, not full double road, but that's how it was interpreted for DMN properties and for the development in front of that many years ago. Additionally, your planned unit development article allows for more dwelling units per access point. Now, they may, as part of the plan, need to make the fire department happy with sprinkled buildings or dry hydrants or something else like that. But that's for the developer and the fire inspector to sort out.
At what point does the public get to start questioning, commenting, and so forth?
Well, this is not a public meeting. This is not the public meeting portion.
Okay.
We have a public hearing coming up, and there will be questions there. But again, the issues are limited to 3 minutes worth of conversation, and depending on what the issues are, Zach may be able to answer them, or the developer may be able to answer them.
Okay, because I represent about 180 homes adjacent to this development. I get 3 minutes?
Yes,
Okay, so I need to bring 100 and something people with me.
that's an option you have.
Yeah, indeed.
So, this item is actually not on the public hearing agenda for this evening. This was on a previous public hearing agenda. This is just the regular meeting agenda. We have only one item on the public hearing agenda,
Okay.
which is not this item.
There will be subsequent meetings about this.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
But we can make public
Yeah.
comments during the public comment section.
Well, not during the public hearing.
No,
but
not
at
during
the end of the
public,
meeting.
towards
yes.
Got it, okay, thanks. Pardon me, I apologize for the interruption. It's important.
Zach, do you have anything else, or?
No, just there are a couple of points where you can provide guidance to the applicants to get it ready for preliminary site plan.
I guess my question on the interpretation of access is, what would be the point of, if we're saying that the PUD shall be located so to be accessed from a paved county primary road, but the language is not as strong as, like you said, what would be the intent then? I mean, you can always access a paved county primary road if you drive down this road and the next road. So what would be the point of even having that in the ordinance if it didn't mean?
Yep, so the challenge, so as you recall, we had conflicts between what the zoning ordinance said and what the future land use map said, or the master plan said. And in that case, it was clear that the master plan had one intent and the zoning ordinance had another. But the master plan is regulatory, or the zoning ordinance is regulatory, but the master plan is policy. So regulatory controls. In this case, when you're interpreting laws, you have to look at the plain meaning of the text, even if it's not consistent with the intent. So the intent probably was that access was from there, but I have seen many cases where language will be the primary access is from there, or you can only have access from there. So the intent may likely have been different from what the plain text reads.
Well, the intent is to safely serve the proposed development without adverse impact to the community. I mean, that's why that would have that statement in there, right? Well, I mean, it says that the PUD shall be located so that it can be accessed from a paved county primary road, able to safely serve the proposed development. So regardless if it's a paved county primary road, I just think it needs to be reviewed a little bit more in depth than the road commission's driveway permit. There's a reason why you would want that. There's different standards, and there's curves out there that probably don't meet the design speed. There's site distance issues, so that some of those you kind of maybe expect wouldn't be an issue because it's a paved county primary road, but now that it's not, we still need to look at those issues.
Yeah.
That's my preference.
And so regardless of the use, if they can't get a driveway permit approved by Livingston County Road Commission, it doesn't matter what your zoning ordinance allows.
Yeah, I get it, but
Yes.
same way the other way. Just because they give a driveway permit doesn't mean that we need to approve it and just say, well, the road commission looked at it and they issued the permit. It doesn't go both ways. They can issue the permit, but it doesn't mean we need to approve it. Because once again, I don't think they looked at all those type of issues.
Anybody else have questions? That was one of the
As far as the first issue that was on there was the scale of the plans, I'm okay with that at the current scale. I mean, I use it in PDF, I zoom in, but I did email you once, Ross, and would you guys be able to provide the electronic files?
Yeah,
That way, if there is a question, like what's the distance here to here, I can just measure it in
yeah,
files.
for sure.
Um,
You
So-
ever pass them out, Ross?
I'm sorry?
You ever pass them out? BDS?
Oh,
No, I'm sorry, I meant the DGN files.
Oh, the CAD files.
Yeah, CAD files.
Yeah.
That way, you know,
Yeah.
like, most of this in here, it's scalable plans, I've set the scale and measured the PDF,
Yeah.
but if there was a question, you know.
If you want the CAD files, no, I have no problem giving them to you if you need.
So I think before there was a previous comment of someone about, like, how far is this detention pond, there was like the, I can't think of the name of this, to the north, but where was the,
It was a Tyrone right there?
yeah, someone had a question, like, what is from this outlet culvert to the road or something, but I forgot the question, one of the meetings, maybe in the public hearing.
Yeah, that's a great point.
But as far as the scale, is that something everyone's okay with?
So.
What is the width of the road as it comes off of Runyon Lake Road, the drive?
The proposed road, I'll let the applicants speak to that.
As far as the intent, it's really difficult because we've only had one other PUD.
I know, I get
Which
it.
abut the one other PUD is Irish Hills, which one entrance is on
It's-
old US 23.
What it is basically a 15-foot lane in and two
Okay.
12-foot lanes out at the throat. And
That
then we
would go
widen
right
off
through,
with the
yes.
boulevard in
So
there.
any
Okay.
home in there can be
So
accessed.
that's right.
But at the stop bar, we got two 12-foot out lanes and one 15-foot in.
But it's worth looking at
Okay.
as a comparison.
It's just hard to see that on the scale.
And then the next one's going to make it a bigger scale.
No.
So it is rich.
Well, my eyes are getting old.
Yeah, that's what I'm reading. Where, what's that, what's 50 feet at that? Yeah, they say 50 foot right away.
And there's no deceleration.
Well, that,
Well, yeah, here.
you said there's no turn lane?
Well, there's not a deceleration.
Yeah, so that to me would be, it's not a traffic study, which we're putting into final plans, right?
That's why they, yeah. One split.
I think the other question I had too was in relationship to the phase one area of the plan and the phase two area of the plan. Do you have a time frame you're looking at for phase two?
If you look in the lower right-hand corner, I put a phasing schedule and timeline.
Okay.
Graph right there.
Yep. All right.
Basically, the first phase, we're gonna split up into three, ideally, three parts. So next year would be the first phase, which is about 20 lots, then the following year would be another 20 lots. And then third year in, we kind of finish that part off and start rough grading the second phase. So again, kind of 20 lots, roughly a year is what we're thinking. If it goes good and we sell them, we could double it the next year. But as of right now, we're roughly about 20 lots a year. With rough grading for the whole entire, say, phase one done during the first 20 lots. We put all the utilities in and rough grade the roads and kind of prep it for curb and gutter, sidewalks, and everything else, I guess when we go the following year.
Do you know what page that was on? Sorry, I'm looking for that.
Oh,
I saw it.
the cover sheet, lower right-hand corner.
Okay.
So it'd be, yeah, first page.
First page.
And then like lower right-hand corner.
Make it easier for everyone to see that. Yep. Thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah, right there.
So my question on the, zoom out here, on the north edge of the site plan, is there room there for any type of boundary or landscaping?
Yeah.
It looks like, on the plan, it looks like the road's right on the property line.
There's about a 15-foot space that's going to be kind of along there from, say, the back of the curb to the property line, 15 to 18 foot. So there's enough to get a tree.
P6.
A tree kind of in there.
Okay.
P6 shows.
And that water does kind of encroach from that pond to the north onto our property a little bit. So it's going to be tight kind of where the water is. But there's enough room to put a tree between, say, the water and the back of the curb.
A question on lots 6 and 7 too. They back up to 2 lots that are on White Lake Road. Is there any, the other lots all seem to have open space, which I'm assuming is going to be left wild as it is. Is there anything between those lots and the ones that are on White Lake Road?
We have not provided anything. Not to say that we couldn't put some landscaping or require some landscaping between there and there. In order for the lots to get the math to work to get half acre, I had to push those to that property line. The other ones, was able to put a little buffer between there.
Okay, is that like a drainage ditch?
Yes, I do have a drainage swale connecting that wetland that's to the left into, kind of through there to the wetland that's kind of to the right, and that natural water course that comes through there.
Well, and if I may, as a reminder, as part of the regulatory flexibility provided as part of PUD, the lot doesn't need to have to be half acre. So if this body, then the township board believes that there's recognizable and substantial benefit of having that extra space, you could approve smaller lots. You could allow for different setbacks and different lot coverages, again, in order to provide for recognizable substantial benefit. That might be another good guidance point for the applicants today.
Well, it's just a little difficult to tell because there's no, obviously the houses aren't listed on the lots there where the buildings are.
They do have it. Let's see, right here.
Well, but I'm talking about the neighbors' lots.
Yeah, oh yeah, the neighbors,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, understood. This might help. It's on the last page.
So, with that, Kurt, do you think it's worthwhile to have them shown on there?
Well, it would help me in addressing.
I remember in maybe one of the other meetings, there was questions and we were trying to see where the house was, and there, right across the entrance, or was that the previous entrance, or as they revised it, and it was tough. Now there's, I don't know if these lot numbers are new, the parcel numbers, but that helps a little, you know. I don't know if that was on there before.
Well, as far as,
The parcel numbers that across the street from the entrance on White Lake Road.
no, it wasn't on the last one. We showed all those parcels and kind of the properties that were across the street
Okay.
where they drove down.
And so the applicants should be able to pull pretty decent, accurate locations for structures from the Livingston County aerials.
Yeah.
So that would be guidance, like if you want to have that on preliminary and you're okay with it pulled from there, it'll be accurate to within a couple of feet. It won't be foot and inch accurate, but.
Yeah.
All right.
As far as the outlines of the existing structures that are adjacent to
Yeah.
it.
We entertain a motion to move into the public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Read the public hearing notice.
I'm sorry, who supported that? Who supported it? You made the motion, who supported it?
Kurt made it.
Yeah, who seconded?
I'll second that.
Okay, notice is hereby given. The Tyrone Township Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, October 12th, 2021, beginning at 7:30 p.m. at the Tyrone Township Hall. The purpose for the public hearing is to receive public comments regarding a request by Lauren DeRocher, represented by Gary DeRocher, for an amendment to an outdoor storage and contractor office special land use and site plan regulated by zoning ordinance number 36, section 13A03, U PCI special land uses in Article 22, special land uses, located at 7079 Old US 23, Benton, Michigan, tax ID 470429400006. The property is zoned PCI, planned commercial industrial. Guess we probably start with Zach's review, if that's okay, Zach.
Howdy. So I will do the shorter version since we've discussed this before, but if anyone has questions, let me know and I'll get into a bit more details. So as a reminder, this is a special land use and site plan amendment. It's a major amendment as determined by a pre-application subcommittee meeting that determined it was major, so that requires review through this process. If it had been not a major or an unmajor, it would have just been reviewed and approved administratively. The request is for expansion of an open storage yard that's used as a contractor yard. The front part of the property was approved for this use in 2018. Your zoning ordinance doesn't have a use that is exactly this, but at the time it was determined to be similar to a contractor yard. Let's see, property information is unchanged from the last time. The western portion of the property where the proposed expansion was previously wooded, but it's been cleared. It is zoned PCI, planned commercial industrial, as is the future land use. And the proposed use has been considered comparable to a special land use within the district. Next page shows you the surrounding uses and zoning. To the immediate north is another PCI zone commercial property. The other ones there are zoned FR, farming residential. It does call for PCI expansion in the future land use map there. But screening is required between commercial uses like this and residential, and there's some specific language in there for the open storage yard that we'll get to in a little bit. Natural resources, as we mentioned, it's relatively flat. The plan, because the property naturally slopes from the center towards the east and west, is to have 2 detention pond areas. There are no wetlands, and the woodlands have been removed on the rear. For area width, height, and setbacks, the proposed lot meets the required area for this. The plans that were brought here last time have been revised so that the areas where the gravel surfaces have kind of creeped into the required setbacks have been pulled back. So the proposed improvements do meet the required setbacks. However, as part of the open storage yard, this body could require larger setbacks if it's determined necessary for screening or buffering or negative impact management from adjacent residential uses. As noted on there, there are buildings that are within the required setback, but those are legally non-conforming buildings and there are no proposed changes as part of this. Access and circulation, there's a current driveway to the east from the old US 23. It will be paved. It will be narrower than the current one, and the applicant has said that it will be paved. We did receive a letter from the Livingston County Road Commission stating terms would be necessary for approval, basically that the contractor needs to provide insurance information and pay a $30 permit fee, which is pretty good for permit fees. Off-street parking and loading. The specific standards for open storage yards, and we discussed this previously, require completely paved surfaces without an ability for waiver. However, when this was originally before the body in 2018, the planner's recommendation was to selectively apply the standards for open storage yards because it wasn't a complete fit. And at that time, the Planning Commission granted waivers to allow for gravel surfaces instead of the paved surfaces. So we believe that it's consistent with how it was interpreted back then to have gravel instead of the paved. And the applicant has put restrictions as part of the site plan on heavy maintenance of vehicles on site. So there is less risk of intrusion of chemicals into the ground. There won't be need for expansion of essential services as part of this. There will be, as mentioned, stormwater management improvements. From the previous plan, there have been changes as directed by the Road Commission for the one that's on the eastern side of the property so that the spillway is outside the right-of-way and slightly reconfigured. For landscaping and screening, there's been changes with that from what you saw previously. There is a berm proposed along the northern side of the expansion area. That berm was previously 3 feet in the plans. The current one is for 5 feet, and it kind of slopes down following the contour of the property. There are 46 evergreens called for there with 3 different species, eastern hemlock, eastern white pine, and white spruce. That's a very good practice to have multiple trees because you don't want the one bug to wipe them all out. There's not additional proposed screening along any other expansion areas. The residential uses there are a bit far off. Now the property to the west, the future land use map does call for it to be medium density residential, so there could be potential conflict. But it's not a good practice to require, for example, landscaping to be added in the future when the neighboring property is developed. Either you're required as part of this or whoever goes in next has to manage that buffers. So as mentioned, the Planning Commission can require additional buffering if it believes it's necessary for the residential uses, and I believe Mr. Nicholson shared concerns or comments from one of the neighbors about this, so they're probably here to speak. And the berm itself isn't fully consistent with the standards in your zoning ordinance. Specifically, your ordinance says if you're going to have a berm, you have to have 2 feet flat on the top. This one just curves the whole way. It's probably not going to be mowed like a typical berm in front of Arby's or Target or something like that, so it's likely less of a concern. Site plan note 11 states that there will be no lighting with the proposed amendment, that there will be no outdoor advertising signs. Although perhaps the applicant can speak, I think the past 4 months I've driven by 23, I see the topsoil sign out there. So it would be good to hear if that's temporary or if that's going to remain there. Specific standards for open storage yards. So special land uses generally have additional standards to manage them because there's an understanding that by the nature of the use, they could create greater impacts on the surrounding properties. Basically all the equipment in areas used need to meet the required setbacks for the zoning district. As noted, the plans have been changed so that all of the proposed expansion area and some of the existing area will meet those required setbacks. Access is from a paved principal arterial, Old US 23, towards the east. The driveway will be paved. Staging areas meet the required yard setbacks and are within the property. Outdoor storage of material. The plan has been corrected so that the hours are supposed to be between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. with a change in seasonal but expansion for potential emergency uses. And I want to make it clear for the applicants here that special land uses are a bundle of approvals. And so if there are violations of the terms of approval, the township could revoke the approval for special land use. So the hours are important. It's not just on paper. It's an expectation. It's basically a contract that we allow you to do this with the expectation that you will follow these certain things. Screening, as we mentioned, there's a 5-foot berm proposed with the evergreen screening. No other proposed screening around the expansion area. The applicant has not indicated that they intend to display any products for sale. See, the existing buildings are there. There's no proposed additional buildings. Lighting, as we described, there's no proposed additional lighting. There's no outdoor storage in the required front yard. It's all behind the berm, and all the expansion area will be significantly past the front yard. We mentioned the berm and the screening along the northern expansion area. And the lot meets the minimum site dimensions, and we do recommend township collect a performance guarantee to make sure landscaping and stormwater, those types of things are done in accordance with the plan. For the applicable decision criteria, there's two, the basic site plan review, and then for the special land use. Site plan review are in Article 23, there's 23.02 and 23.03. And the site plan appears to be generally complete. The proposed expansion use is generally consistent with the zoning ordinance, except for those areas where noted. And there's an opportunity for waivers or adjustments for the landscaping and for the berm, but also opportunity for larger requirement if this body determines is necessary. And it doesn't appear to have a significant impact on public facilities. If this body determines that the screening would manage the negative impacts of the sound and light that's currently there, then it would be consistent with the surrounding area. The master plan, as mentioned, it calls for these types of uses there as a special use. It's consistent with the stated intent of the zoning district in which it's located, the PCI. Neighborhood compatibility. Again, the screening is the main issue here. If this body determines that the screening is appropriate, then it would be compatible with the neighborhood. Most of is already screened from the front, from US 23, both old and new, and the site plan has been amended to include those trees on the front berm that weren't there. We've mentioned in the past that paved surfaces are better for reducing chemical penetration in the soil, but there is the self-imposed restriction of not doing heavy maintenance on the site. It won't require any additional public services. The traffic is not likely to increase significantly, and the paving and narrowing of the driveway from its current expansive width will generally be an improvement for the traveling public. And that's what we've got. There are a couple of comments and decisions to be made on the back. So the driveway permit will need to be approved by Livingston County Road Commission, access and circulation approval by the township engineer and fire chief, stormwater management system approval by the township engineer, and then the planning commission, you guys should determine if the proposed landscaping will provide adequate screening from adjacent residential properties, especially the property to the north along the proposed expansion area. Should determine if the proposed berm should receive a waiver from having to comply with all the design standards, and it's principally the 2-foot flat part on top. Should determine if increased setbacks are necessary to mitigate any impacts on residential uses along the northern, western, and southern lot lines. Should determine that all activities and storage will be contained within the site in order to waive the requirement to provide fencing around the rear and side lot lines. And we recommend collection of the performance guarantee.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, is there someone here representing the applicant? Do you have any comments or? No. Okay.
Who's the township engineer?
Spicer Group
Spicer? So they're gonna review
at the
the
township
stormwater
board level. Yeah.
calculations and everything?
Yep, generally that's at the township board level with the recommendation, if there is a recommendation,
Yeah,
then
we
that would be
recommended
a condition.
contingent upon that.
Yep.
Yes, I mean, someone should look at that.
Yep.
As far as the proposed landscaping and screening, I guess the way I see it, it's heavily wooded to the west and pretty much wooded to the south. To the north, there's a little less existing woods there, and then there's a house to the north. So I think that's where they're proposing the screening. I'd be interested to hear if any adjacent neighbors have any comments on that. I don't know if we've heard of that before. Yeah.
We did receive that one
Yeah.
email from a neighbor, primarily of noise after hours, I think was
Oh,
the
that's
major
another one.
concern in the.
Yeah. So with that noise after hours, is that, I mean, with this application to the side, they have an existing special land use.
Correct,
And so did that violate the existing special land use?
potentially.
And so then they're asking for more, expanding that. I guess I
They're
can,
expanding the site,
which is
but
going
the
to
hours
expand.
is another part of
But,
the approval process.
but,
need to
you know,
determine what's appropriate.
I get it. But expanding the site meaning more trucks, more noise after hours. If they're already going after hours,
Potentially, yes.
so that issue's only going to get worse. Was that the first that we've had complaints on that?
That is the first that I heard, other than what's been mentioned during
So
previous
like,
meetings.
so I guess with the existing special land use or an expanded one, what would happen now? Say that didn't,
If we were to receive a written complaint,
yeah.
then we would follow up. If we verify, then we could take action as necessary,
And again,
whether that be revoking or whatnot. I mean, we have had to do that in the past with other special land uses that weren't complying, that were causing nuisances, where we actually needed to issue stop work orders. And basically, they need to come back to reapply.
I have a question for the applicant. We have an email that's on September 15th. It looks like you guys ran all the way to the morning of the 16th. So literally, it looks like you guys were going till 2:30 in the morning. And you're, right on the first front page, it says you're only going to go from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. I mean, with a special caveat that if there's an emergency, other additional activity would be allowed. But do you have any explanation for why that was going on?
Paving company was doing work on the long road ramps, that was dumping the aggregate in the back of the yard. It was 2 nights.
Is that, I mean, so that's, seems like an
Well, if
unusual
it's a special
circumstance,
land use, it's an unusual circumstance. Technically, it should be something that the township is informed of and permits accordingly.
So it is a bit of a one-off.
Potentially, but if something similar were to happen in the future as part of the special land use, they should be coming to us and requesting an amendment. Something like that could potentially be a minor amendment, which does not need to come in front of this body formally. But it should nonetheless be something that the township is involved in moving forward.
Anybody else?
Just, I only had one regarding the sign that Zach mentioned, that Copsville sign. Is that temporary? I know, I can't remember. I drive by it all the time, but I can't remember if
I
it
was
is.
supposed to take it down last time, I didn't, so I guess
Okay.
I'll make it temporary.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so if there is members of the public who would like to speak regarding this application, now would be the time.
Yeah, let's have them come
Would you guys, would you do me a favor, pull up the satellite view of that? I see you had it up there, I want to watch it.
Okay.
Grading, do they have grading permits to do all that up? It looks like they're already prepared to make a storage facility, because they've already taken the topsoil off the trees and everything, so they've already gone ahead to do it.
They've cleared this occurrent,
Yeah. But I mean,
so they can clear it.
they've already got, you look at the pictures, you ought to see this place. Looks like there's tires, it looks like tires. As far as I can zoom in on my satellite, I know they're doing work on their trucks there. I think we got a potential problem here. I know one of the people here that I know very personally, lives right south of that. And you're gonna be running trucks to 2:30 in the morning, and I know she's gonna be blasted out of her bedroom by the beepers, the heavy machinery. There's a lot of potential problems here. They're gonna be working on their vehicles there. I mean, oil spills. These big trucks and machinery go through a lot of fluids that are dangerous. The storage is one thing, but blow that thing up. So there's piles of stuff behind that barn, just tons of piles of stuff. And that's all over the property. Look at the gas company next door and how nice and neat they are. I think you guys are gonna need to request, if you go ahead with this, you can request a bond. Because, looking down on Detroit where they had that green ooze and stuff, I mean, we don't know what they're gonna put in this place. Shipping containers. I thought the last master plan, we weren't allowed to have shipping containers. I mean, you look at the driving shipping containers piled up in there. It's a potential, and you look where it's located on the road there, look at the house. Look where the driveway is. I think a better fish would put the driveway on the north side of that house. You're away from that curve. You're right on that curve there. You got these double tandem trucks coming in and out of there. I mean, it's, and they're gonna add more. Just, like you said, he's already in violation of a couple of things, noise. I'm really concerned about, he's doing mechanic work in that barn. And I told you about this fuels on the property. He says he's not, but he also said he wasn't gonna put retail signs out front either. And I kind of chuckled because the sign's out front. And that was his words, that he wasn't gonna be retail. And like I said before, height concerns with machinery, there's a lot of concerns there. But, to run a business on that property, and I see it the way it used to be, if you zoom in, and I know you're capable of zooming in a little better for the public. You can bird's eye view that right down to the garbage behind the barn. And, those are tires, they sure look like tires to me. I don't want a landfill. It's not my backyard, but it's in my township, and I don't want to pay to clean it up when they file for bankruptcy and move on, like a lot of these companies do.
Thanks, Scott.
Ross, is this the only email, again, I just want to be clear, that we received about after-hours activity there?
This is the only correspondence. Yeah.
Okay, just that one time that had to do with the repaving of Center Road and the milling and that. Owen? Not, okay, not.
It was Owen.
I meant Center, sorry. Okay, thanks.
That's what he said.
Okay.
Is there any other members of the public who would like to speak regarding this application?
neighbor to the north, and,
What's your name?
oh, I'm Dexter.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're getting, yeah, a lot of noise all the time. Definitely after 6, all the time. What'd you say the time in the morning was, like, 6, or was it 7? 7, okay. Yeah, I get behind your truck all the time on the way to work, and I leave at 6:45 every morning, so, terrified. The other thing, like, gentleman here said, with the, fluids leaking, what happens when it gets down to aquifer? I mean, does any of you guys live in that subdivision to the north of there? And we might all be pulling out the same aquifer. Then what? How do you clean that up? Well, if you can. So, as far as noise and stuff goes, all the time, 5-foot berm, I don't think it's gonna do much good. I think you need probably at least 12 feet or more. If you're gonna block the noise, I mean, if they keep it, between 7 and 6, okay, no problem. But if it's later than that, it's quite a problem. And as far as the pavement up here by the road, that'll help, because right now, I mean, whenever it rains, dragging all that mud from the lot, you constantly down the road, makes the road slippery, somebody's not paying attention, comes through there and spins out, just, yeah, could happen, I guess, but, yeah, that's our main concerns.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Please.
I'm just gonna stand here.
Okay, what's your name?
My name is Angela. It is our property to the west. The noise has increased since they took down the trees. I know it doesn't look like our house is very close, but it echoes pretty good. I get up at 4:30 in the morning to go to work, and so I'm in bed by 8. There's still noise going on sometimes. Honestly, you're probably thinking, why didn't we say something? Because honestly, I didn't think it would make a difference if we said anything. I would like some sort of buffer put to the west side, whether it's landscaping or a berm. First of all, I don't want, trucks being accidentally parked over the property line. I don't want anybody from that side walking onto our land to look at the pretty trees or the deer, that sort of thing. So those are my concerns, and then the leaching, of course, as well, of any fluids from the trucks. Those are my main concerns, because, we have to live there 24/7. So that's it. I would really not want, for special land use, the time to be extended to 10 below. That would just be horrible. So that's it. That's it, really. Is all I have to say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah, sure. My name is Mike Stiff. I live in the township. I live in the hills of Tyrone, which is a subdivision off of Pci Neighborhood at the north end of the township. From what I'm listening to this this business that has been afforded some special dispensations by the planning zone, predicated on some agreement to certain behaviors to mitigate specific concerns. And what I'm hearing is there's a habitual disregard for the agreement that they proclaimed they would abide to when they got their dispensations in the first place. I think that certainly speaks to an absence of goodwill, that were you to agree to offer them any additional accommodations predicated on some agreed to behavior on their part, that there's no good confidence that they would abide by what they say they're going to agree to. And I think that's good justification to deny their application.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else? All right. Close the public comment section. Anything else for the public hearing, guys?
So as far as storage tank, like the storage tanks or tires or something like that, and we don't know what's out there, but don't they need to comply with other environmental regulatory agencies? Or I guess, how, that is a concern if they're out there fixing equipment and are storing stuff on the site that they're not allowed to. But, I mean, we don't go out there and look at it. I mean, I get that, you know, there's sometimes storage yards and contractors' yards aren't very neat and tidy, but now, the stuff that's out there shouldn't be leaking chemicals and stuff. And I guess, I don't know if it is, or if it's, seems to be a concern. What do we do to mitigate that?
Well, I think the one thing that,
Because personally, I don't think it should be paved. I think that paving that lot, which, you know, could control some contaminants, is gonna have more negative impact due to erosion concerns and increased runoff.
yeah.
I mean, you pave a gas station because you want to contain the contaminants and stuff like that, but a big site like this, and I'm under the impression that they're storing equipment, you know, storing some aggregate or other equipment, but, you know, how do we stop them from storing any kind of chemicals that could contaminate the soil?
Well, that's a good question. I think one of the things we can do is what Zach mentioned in here, which we haven't done extensively before, and that's require performance guarantees on it.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that.
I think, for example, the driveway issue, which was when the original special land use was put through back in 2018, required that the driveway be paved within 2 years, which it hasn't been done. So, I guess some of the other issues, if we're looking at approving this, is there need to be some performance guarantees. The one thing about the industrial areas there is they need to be good neighbors to the people next door to them. And if they're not following the times of operation as they have listed, then that's an issue. Now granted, we only have one piece for that, but the other issues in there are that there are a lot of small things, setbacks, the size of the berm, the way the berm is put together, things like that, that at least offer a sense of concern as to whether it's going to be completed as they have stated. And so I guess the only way to ensure that that's going to happen is to set up performance guarantees.
So we have a business directly north of them. What are their hours of service?
Is it propane?
Yeah.
Because they have, what, 6 or 8 trucks?
Yeah, at least.
We need to check that. That's, I don't know when exactly that became a propane facility, but it predates most of
It's prior to.
our current ordinance.
Yeah.
So I can research that, if that's something you're interested in.
I'm just wondering, I mean, is part of this noise coming from propane, or is it all from him, or?
That is a good question. That's something we can check out.
Because in the wintertime, I know they run a lot of hours.
I just don't see that as being as quite a loud operation as dumping a load of asphalt millings and slamming the tail, you know, slamming the gate on it. I mean,
No, but all
even
they're
if they had a
saying-
whole body slam, and I'm pretty much sure that's what that was.
All of them run PTO pumps that fill propane.
Is that, I don't know, is that?
Yeah. And they all have air brakes. So when they move around in the parking lot, they're gonna,
Are they operating?
But the propane place isn't right next to my house, so it's not them.
it's in front of your house.
Yeah, it's always in front of me. The other stuff's a lot closer. I mean, we're, what, 140 feet off the property line?
I was just curious of what the hours were of that business.
Suburban propane looks like 8 to 5.
Yeah, their website
5
says
days
it's-
a week.
I can check our files, see if,
Well,
yeah,
that
it is a
was,
special
it
land
predates-
use at the street.
It was in before this administration was even here.
Oh, absolutely, but I can still look at the history of it, see if, you know, if it was,
That was early '80s.
yeah, if it was between, I think, 76 and 97, that would have been essentially our 65 ordinance, just slightly amended, which is nothing like our current ordinance. That's only like 200 pages versus 500 and something.
It was, propane truck is nothing compared to a gravel truck, making noise too. They're a lot quieter, unless they're pumping propane.
So the hours of operation, that's cut and dry. We're saying here's what the hours they're proposing. If they're outside of that, they're outside of that.
You
But
say,
what
except
about
for
the-
an emergency.
So should we define emergency? Was nighttime paving of Owen Road ramps emergency? You know, I mean, just, I'm saying that could, someone could say, oh, well, we thought that was an emergency. You know,
Let the applicant tell me what the emergencies are. What are your emergencies?
We generally don't like to work at night, so this.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I said we generally don't like to work at night. That's not a typical thing that we try and do. If you have a water main break, sewer break, you know, something happens on a job, you know, that was a job that got 2 days of rain prior to that, and, you know, contractor asked me to use my yard that they could get in and dump the aggregate, you know, so it was a kind of an anomaly that happened, but we don't like to work at 2 o'clock in the morning, we don't do it.
So emergency then would be defined as any time somebody has a request that's outside of normal working hours.
Right.
Okay, well, that's pretty general.
Our general business model is not to do emergency or repair work on a regular basis. Unlike everybody else here that probably wants to be home at that time with their family. You know, we work long enough as it is, but I mean, there's certain things that happen, you know. When you get a truck that breaks down in the city, it doesn't get, you know, towed in till 10, 11 o'clock at night. You know, I mean, those type of things happen. You don't make a habit of it.
Okay, well, are those types of activities more likely to happen in the spring and summer and not the fall and winter, or is this all the time?
More likely probably in the summer and the work months, you know, that's when you're gonna be working more. I mean, I sit there every day and, you know, I get noise and problems, not just in general, but if most of that noise comes from the constant drumming of the highway that's right there. My office is there, I sit there all day long. Rather than my vehicles that leave in the morning and come back at night. Between the ambulances and emergency vehicles going up Old 23 on a regular basis, the semi-trucks, the Jake brakes, and the noise and the accidents on the highway is a constant. You just heard a vehicle go by here, sitting in the meeting here, you hear the semi-trucks go by. There's a lot of the drum of, the differentiate between what's going on in my yard at all the time and what's going on in the highway is, there's a lot to decipher that.
So to answer some questions that I'm hearing popping up, your zoning ordinance says for open storage yards, 7 to 10 at night is what you get. That's the maximum bounds of what the zoning ordinance provides. As part of a special land use and looking at what's going around in the neighborhood, the adjacent properties, you guys can approve or require more limited hours to make sure, again, to mitigate negative impacts. So it's a reasonable exercise of the approval process to limit it. And I found language here, section 22.08. It talks about expiration, but the very last sentence is, the breach of any condition, safeguard, or requirement shall automatically invalidate the permit granted. So if there's documentation of a violation of some commitment on here, the special land use stops. Now, there's gonna be a due process thing where the applicant has to be noted and can appeal that and that stuff, but it's serious. And likely enforcement will start with the neighbors. So that's a question I always get asked, how are you guys gonna know what's going on? And my response is, you're gonna tell us. Because you're there, you know when things are happening that aren't supposed to. Code enforcement usually doesn't happen after 5 p.m. until we're told something's going on. And if there is concern about sound, berms are generally the best way to management. Trees will block views, but they won't block sound.
And if, as mentioned, a 5-foot berm is not going to block the sound.
It's probably better than a 3-foot berm, but not as good as a 7 or 8-foot berm.
As far as the sound, now, if someone reports a sound outside of those hours, that would be a violation. But what about within those hours? Is there a maximum amount of sound?
Yep.
And is that?
That applies to every house. Well, there are a couple exceptions, airplanes, you can't violate airplanes. Although that would be fun to try to serve a notice of violation on a crop duster. But there's certain things that do get exemptions, but otherwise the sound applies to all uses.
So, I mean, in reality, it'd be prudent for the applicant to put a buffer that's gonna limit that sound. Because if they have sound that is going beyond that, and that's something that we can measure, or it was outside that time frame, then that can just get, that special land use permit can be revoked.
Close the public hearing. Yeah. We can act on this, or we can.
Yeah. What is everybody thinking?
Well, I think there's, so, I think the performance.
Yeah.
You know, that's something that.
Well, they have special land use already, and so what they're doing is basically expanding.
And I get that. I'd be a lot more comfortable if there was no previous complaints and everything that was previously requested was met.
Yes. But knowing that that's not going to happen, the best way to enforce it is to have performance guarantees.
Yeah. So is that something that we would want to see? Or
We would recommend.
recommend
Yeah.
in contingent?
You could approve it contingent upon the completion of performance guarantees. We'd also have to take a look at the waiver for the berm, and we'd also have to.
And just so we're clear on that, the only thing that we're waiving is the flat top requirement of the berm, which is providing no additional noise value, noise blockage value, but, you know, maybe a little more stability with planting some trees or mowing, or maybe the visual appeal, which I don't think is a concern at this location.
I guess, good question. On the top of the berm, was it intentionally not flattened, or is that just?
I think they're trying to.
Probably
It's
a,
arbitrary how they drew it. I mean, I have no.
yeah, okay.
My guess is he's trying to get high as they can in that buffer. We
Yes.
set that buffer at 30 previously, right? Or what was it? Did we increase it?
50.
Okay, but and then there's only so much room, and I think the slope was like 1-on-3 or something, or.
Yeah.
So to get 5 feet up, you know, you gotta go 15 feet and then back down. So I think I would rather see more height. And we asked for more height and maybe the flat top got next, which I would be okay with that.
I think that's a good trade-off.
Well, so to center folks in the process, this body makes a recommendation to the township board. So if there is concern and you want, for example, to have a taller berm or a berm on the other side, you can approve it with that condition. The plan wouldn't need to be complete tonight, but the plan that would go to the township board would need to reflect those conditions.
Question on that, the western edge, is that just, are you guys gonna mow that, or is that gonna be field or?
It's actually part of the drainage area, so,
Yeah.
and if I understand right from my engineer, I can technically carry the gravel all the way over to within that drainage ditch. What I could do is store or park vehicles in that area, and if I'm right, I actually just told them don't even let the stone go that far, so as not to be an issue, with even, tempting to put stuff there. So if you see on the very end, there's a contour lines, that's, the perimeter all drains from the south and the west into the retention pond, so there'll be some type of a grass mobile area.
Yeah, in the previous meetings, we kind of came to the agreement that the gravel was gonna be pulled back to the 50-foot setback on the west property line. Would you be in agreement to add some additional landscape screening on the western property line with conditional approval?
I don't have a problem going, bigger on the berm on the north side, the west side, I just don't see, it's 100 acres of woods over there.
Your comment about that you would have the option to put the gravel out there, I think that, in the ordinance, you can't, it doesn't say where the gravel can't be there, but we made that request and that was changed, and so that will be in this.
Part of this, yeah.
In the site plan.
Yeah, it's represented right now.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that if my engineer who's on vacation this week, but I'm pretty sure the gravel could extend out to the edge of that ditch. I just couldn't store or park vehicles.
Correct.
I can use it as an alleyway to drive through, and we just opted to pull it.
That's not consistent with my interpretation. That requires aisleways and circulation to meet the setbacks.
Here and over there, that's where we're at.
I agree with that. Right now, what is presented is the aggregate going to the 50-foot setback.
So you are in agreement, though, to potentially increase the height of the berm on the north property line to the maximum height possible within the 50 feet, correct?
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
I mean, I think if we could max that right out, whatever you can get, going 3 to 1 on each side and as high as
But
they go.
I think that's where he's at, 50-foot setback, half that 25. Yeah, he could probably go a little higher.
I would think.
Yeah, maybe it's not
It's
3 to
almost
1,
like
but
8 if it's 3 to 1.
or 1 on 2. Visually 1 on 2 looks like a hump, but it's not a visual concern back there.
Better for the noise abatement.
You'll get higher.
I think that'd be a good change.
I could see even about pulling that pond down a little bit to the south. Give us a little more room, I lose some parking area, but if we got us another berm in that area, I think that'd be the easiest solution to it.
So what height do you think you could get on that berm?
I'd like to see it in the 10, 12 foot range. I think I'm gonna have excess swells from the pond anyways, when you dig it. I say I pull the pond down 20 feet to the south, and get more room up there to be able to put that.
right, we'll close the public hearing and move back into our regular agenda.
Yeah, move that we move back into regular session.
Support. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Lake Urban. Other PD. Did answer most of our questions. I don't know if we have any other.
Others, yeah,
We were on old business number one.
Lake Urban.
Lake Urban. Yep.
So what I heard is that this body seemed generally comfortable with the waiver for the scale,
Yeah.
for the 150
Yeah.
instead of 100.
Yeah.
That it seemed interested in having the outlines of the adjacent dwellings taken from the Livingston County GIS
Yeah.
preliminary site plan review. The development impact and traffic studies. I don't believe we had discussion. Is that something you want for preliminary or for final?
I think we should have for preliminary, that's meant to us. I mean, it's gotta be done either way.
Yeah, I
right?
think it would be helpful to have.
You know, we got questions on site distance, traffic issues that other people brought up in many meetings. I just think, let's just have it done, it's gotta be done anyway. Now, what needs to occur in that, I think we got a little table, right? We need to,
Yep.
is it,
The table,
Yeah.
there are like 3 classes,
yeah.
and this is the middle one, if I recall.
And because, you know, that could say, oh, they need a recommended turn lane here, right? And then maybe, you know, why not get that in the preliminary plan? My thought. In that note, was that in response to the comments? It did say you're in communication with the traffic engineer, so that's, you're working on that.
Yes, we are working on
Yeah.
that, the traffic analysis and the traffic impact, yes.
The other things for direction is, well, we discussed the landscaping. If there'd be interest in allowing for smaller lots than the half acre they've proposed, so that in that one section, I think it was lot 6 and 7, that there could be guaranteed open space buffer. And again, with the PUD, you could ask for 10,000 square foot lot.
Yeah, I get it. Right now, all the setbacks and everything meet the zoning for the future land use map, right?
There are some deviations that they've proposed.
Are these deviations on the type on the sheet? Isn't that what it needs to show?
Yep, on sheet P1,
Yeah, site requirement?
there's existing zoning and then proposed PUD.
Oh, yeah.
So as a reminder, PUD basically becomes a mini zoning district.
But the existing zoning is rural estate. But the future land use map is R2.
Part of it was R2, but
Yeah.
it could be considered more, depending on whether or not it recognizes that with previously.
Yeah, phase 1, the northern portion was in the R2, southern portion was in the RD.
that's strictly exact would be to address an open space scenario, right? It wouldn't.
Yep. Don't believe we discussed streetlights. You can require them or not allow them, or leave it open to the applicant. And those are the outstanding ones, or at least the direction that you can provide tonight.
I'm thinking.
The streetlights?
Yeah.
I mean,
Are lights required at the road intersections, the main, like where, at White Lake and, Onion Lake?
That'd be road commission. I'm not familiar with the practice of Livingston County Road Commission. The road commissions I've worked with more generally don't put those in for residential. But each road commission can have their different policy, and also if there's weird sight lines or something like that, they may require, if they don't require it in other places.
John, is that part of this traffic study, gentlemen?
with, I didn't get the,
Just lights at the major road intersections,
um,
as a safety?
I'm not certain on that. I wouldn't expect it to be a part of that.
Yeah.
But, I think there is a sight distance issue southbound on Running Lake Road. If someone's going southbound, they're going to turn into that, there's a, limited sight distance on the through movement or going through on southbound. And if someone stopped there to turn left into the development, you know, someone's not gonna see them coming around that curve.
Especially if they're looking at the potholes.
Well, that's another concern, and that's why I think the intent of the ordinance was to have a development like this on the county, a primary road. The primary road's gonna get more funding. You know, there's more traffic in there. Look at the condition of the road.
Just FYI, John, we did get plenary approvals for the locations for the two driveways.
I know, and, did you have that letter? This other one, we got the letter from the engineer. And it seemed like they looked into the site distance issue for DeRocher, right? It was written in the letter.
Oh, for the.
Yeah.
The other interpretation.
Yeah. I know, but what I'm saying is they provided a letter showing, here's their comments, and what they reviewed.
From Ken Hiller, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
Should make comments as to the responses on the letters as far as site distance on there too, for the two driveway approvals. They're generic comments, but she makes some comments as far as going east and going west, something about site distance. For the White Lake approach.
For White Lake?
For the White Lake approach.
What about the Runyon Lake?
I don't have a copy in front of it. That was approved 3 years ago. I'm pretty sure like 3 years, 3 years ago, that was preliminary approved. We can get a copy of that.
That would be good. I have a question while they're all looking at, in the site notes, it talks about other walkways or nature trails. I don't know if I missed them, or are they included on, or is there a plan for them, or is it just generic language? It's on page 1.
Yeah, if you go to page 2,
Yep.
you kind of make out they're like solid, they're just like black lines right now is kind of what I'm looking at. They kind of cut through the open space areas. If you look kind of on the right-hand side on phase 2, we put like a circle, roundabout type thing. Those are the nature trails kind of going through the open space areas.
Okay. Yep. Once it loads, we'll
on the printed version, it's hard to see, but I do see that the beaver dam is now called out.
Yes, I called it out.
What's the deal with beaver dam? I mean, how is that like regulated? What if they get out there in construction and tear it out? What is that gonna do? For-
By legal. Yeah, I would imagine it would fall under the wetland jurisdiction, but I don't know.
You guys had a delineation done?
Yes, we have had a delineation.
Is there any digital copy of it, or who
We
did it?
can provide you with a copy of it, yes.
Yeah.
I do have a PDF of it at work. I thought we had done that, but if we didn't, we'll get you one.
Yeah, I'd like to see that for sure. And who did it?
Good.
And do you know who did it?
ASTI.
ASTI?
Yeah.
That populates this sheet, right?
For the wetland study?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's sheet P3.
Yeah.
But this P3 was done by Pennsylvania.
The survey was, we picked the flags when we were out there.
Zach, or Ray, where we at with the open space calculations? That's on the open space sheet, I know we changed it a few times, is that meeting the requirements?
We are just under on the uplands.
Yep, that's consistent with my memory. Now, your zoning ordinance, it kind of sets a minimum, but it also allows for an ability to waive it if certain conditions are met, or to allow for off-site preservation. So it can be a field or woodland somewhere else that's not part of this. So there's discretion that you guys have available for that.
What are the, there's a lot of numbers out here, what are the numbers that we're short on?
We're short on the uplands by 7.81 acres. At the same time, we are donating all the water, so the water's untouchable, 48 acres of it. Also, all the wetlands, most of it anyway, it's like 23 acres of wetlands will never be touched.
And then that's accounted for the open space, a portion of it is.
Oh, yes. Correct.
The maximum amount of,
We can do 25% of the water, we can do 35% of the wetlands, and we needed 40% of uplands. So we met the wetlands, we met the water, we just didn't meet the uplands, but we definitely provided more water and wetlands than what's required.
And those calculations are on the bottom left, well, the
Yeah.
left side of P5.
amount of,
Basically, in a nutshell, half the properties being used as open space, natural preserve.
So this walkway that you guys have here at top of Beaver Dam, you have the legend states that it's gonna be a gravel or wood chip walking trail.
Whatever the
How are you
DEQ
gonna
allows me
establish that?
to, whatever the DEQ allows me to do. They might allow me to do part gravel, and they might force me to do part wood chips.
So what, you think you're just gonna go over top of it? Is that what your plan is just make a pathway over it?
Basically, take a mini through there, push some dirt kind of around, put some stone down, and then, or wood chips down.
Are the pathways on their own property?
The pathways are going to be on the open space property.
No, I say cut through property.
No, technically, there's a 10-foot space between the two properties. So technically, neither one of it doesn't go on either one of the properties. It's on a a 10-foot wide piece of open space that touches the road.
Okay.
So
On
it's
every-
not included in the properties.
On every black line that
Correct, it
Is a
goes
walk-
through the, yeah, the correct, that connects to the roads.
That would be an easement.
And
And
then
it's
the other
certainly an
question,
easement, it's part of the open space.
That's between two lots, would that be considered easement? Which
Well,
one?
the easement's if it's on your property, still your property.
Yeah, okay, that's
Right.
I don't know. That's what I was wondering.
the other question, did we get anything from the fire department?
That's my knowledge.
I mean, are they happy with the road system and can get in and out? And
I have not heard back from the fire department.
Okay, because the fire marshal's somebody that does have to sign off on this.
Yes.
Who's gonna respond to that? Livingston County or Genesee?
it's probably gonna be
Well,
Fenton.
It can be both, but it's probably Fenton from where this one's located. The Fenton or Hardin would be the ones that would respond.
Well, that's Fenton,
Yeah.
covers that area.
There's nothing's quick on the outside of Livingston County.
Back
For response.
or Hardin.
So is that we submit through you guys to the Fenton Fire Department, or we just gotta do it ourselves?
You can contact them directly.
Okay.
John, that running lake that you asked about, it's in my email, just send it to us. I
Right.
think bring it to you now, it was done, October 20th of last year, so only you.
And both sides were approved for the recommended site? Is that what we're talking
For the roadway approaches?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Both sides?
Both, yeah, both sides were. We just recently, a month or 2 months ago, got the one on White Lake approved.
These nature trails that you guys are talking about, who's gonna be responsible to make sure those are maintained and kept up?
It'll end up being, the, association.
Is there a calculate, oh, right here, wetland fill mitigation. So is this, within the allowable requirements of Eagle? It seems like a lot of fill. Fill area, phase 1, not much in phase 2.
No, most of it is phase 1.
Phase 1, 1.3 acres. I thought it was like 0.33 or something.
Without having to get a DEQ permit.
So you-
At this point, we have to go to DEQ and ask for it.
Okay.
But at the same time, whatever we take, we are supposed to give 1.5 times that as a minimum.
Have you actually talked to Eagle about what you're trying to do?
We have not submitted to them yet, no.
Good luck on that.
Pretty sure regulations are every 1,000 square feet that you fill near wetlands, you have to take up somewhere else. Is that correct? Do you know that?
They'd like to be on the same property, but yes, within the same drainage district or, yes.
Okay.
You're saying every 1,000 feet,
Every 1,000 square feet you fill in,
you gotta fill somewhere else.
it's gotta be made up somewhere else.
You gotta create a wetland somewhere else.
Preferably within the same.
So basically
boundaries.
every square foot, square foot,
Pretty much.
1 to 1.
These properties up there.
And looking at this map, and I'll be honest with you, I grew up around the area, I used to hunt this land back in the day. I mean, we're talking, some of these lots, you're protruding into areas that I've walked through, I've caught snapping turtles in. And all of a sudden, we're gonna be filling this in, and Eagle's gonna say, yeah, let's do it. And then you're gonna make up the land somewhere else. This is a sponge. I mean, what do you, these right here, what are you gonna put under these? Are they gonna float?
Getting some soil bores, but if we have to put,
You're gonna call Fort fortress foundations and tell them to put 100 helicopters under it?
If that's what it requires.
Yeah. All these lots right here that you have going around these peninsulas. You're way overboard.
Yep.
And not to mention these roadways, like John said. I mean,
How do you make up a wetland that's been there for billions of years? You just go make them, they're there for billions of years, you just don't bury them and make them something.
Yes, yeah, we can try to,
I know.
public comments later, that way we can keep going through the, thank you. A few things we've requested.
I want the full delineation report. I'd like to see that. Yeah.
And then the fire marshal needs to be contacted.
Make some sort of determination on whether the road system is appropriate for the fire trucks to access all of the lots.
Yeah, that would be theirs, yeah.
And then what John said about the actual traffic.
Yeah, the traffic study request, yeah.
Because that's huge.
Make sure we're clear to that, Vincent. I don't, it sounds like we're making a determination at this point. Somebody feels differently, from what I gather.
It does seem like, I've never been out there. I know I've mentioned to you many times I'd like to go, but people keep bringing up that the soil's not gonna support it. Like, are you guys not concerned with that? Like you said, you just.
Not at all.
Is not,
It's,
You have a
I mean,
soil.
if we got two helical piers, it's gonna happen. I can't help it. I mean, it's common practice anywhere that you go around the lake. If they have to do helical piers, they do. If we can undercut it and backfill with sand and create a foundation base, then that's what we'll do.
You have soil boring those files?
No, we haven't done it yet. Again, we're in preliminary stages. I'm trying to get a conceptual approved before I can start spending the money.
Even if there's conditions, we're willing to go abide with them, but.
So what would happen if you got into there, you did the soil borings, and then you saw like this area is not buildable, we gotta reconfigure? Is it, we just reconfigure during final, or?
With
How can we go
guide?
soil bore every spot, or almost different things for us to find that? You know, the challenge of this land, it's got a lot of water. That's why you got 160 acres that we have, and we're only using almost like less than 60 acres. So there's a lot of challenges, and as an investor, you invest so much money, you know, I still have to have a product to sell. And you're right, if somebody cannot build on it, you know, they're not gonna probably buy it. But it's just, it seems with all the challenges, I mean, we're trying to address so many things, but it's just, every time I feel like we're with a standstill. You know, we have no problem coming with condition if you vote on it. And at that time, you know, we can find out what are the conditions.
So, for preliminary, they actually need to have some kind of a preliminary approval before they can go through some of the other necessary channels.
With a lot of stuff.
Right.
Yeah. And our ordinance does clearly state that preliminary site plan approval is not final approval, it does not guarantee.
And I just
final
kind of want
approval.
to,
It's just
don't want
a
to
step.
like lead you on, like we're approving that, something like this, and then you get to some of these challenges, eagle or soil borings or something, and you got to go back and you say, well, that was preliminary approved, so we're.
John, I understand, like Ross said, the preliminary is not the final. And we need to move there, and we still have to go DEQ. There's so many different steps that we have to do. And a lot of the conditions that, you know, that could ask for, even that could be like that in the secondary, we try to meet every one of them. You know, I don't know, you guys will probably get sick of us coming here all the time. I just want to see that we are headed somewhere with conditions. So it's on us, on my behalf, you know, to meet those conditions. Otherwise, I don't get approval for me to do anything with this piece of land.
So kind of the top-up view, preliminary, you're looking at the general concept, does it meet general conditions? And all it grants is permission to file final site plan application. And so it's very common to not do a lot of studies and a lot of samplings and a lot of extra work until after the preliminary, because it's not cheap. And I have seen times where you'll do test wells on a number of properties, and either you're not getting any water from these sites, or you're getting too much arsenic, so you have to change the property boundaries, or all of a sudden you have to put a community well system in. Wasn't anticipated, but you don't do those test wells until you know the general layout. So it's not uncommon for things to change from preliminary to final as additional information comes through. Preliminary is concept and permission to file final site plan application.
Hey, while you're talking about all that, I mean, are you guys tapped into a sewage system, or, I mean?
Can we hold that for public comments, please?
I'm sorry, I just.
Yeah, understood. Thank you. Thanks.
Yes, they are proposing to use the sewer system throughout. Well, it's the township, what's the name of the sewer system, Russ?
Livingston Regional Sewer System.
It's the township's regional system and is treated by Genesee County. It's the same, it's gonna.
Yeah, it's Tyrone Township, Heartland Township, regulated through Livingston County Drain Commission, all the affluent goes to Genesee.
Everything that they need, plus all of us.
In terms of capacity, it should, as far as just looking at the numbers, what we were allocated in terms of REUs, what the system can handle. On paper, yes, but there may need to be changes to the system, additional lift station if it's a pressurized line.
When the first sewer system went out, the field across the highway split. Now it doesn't.
Yep.
But that's still required, so we can waive the debts. So the biggest issue right now, in reality, for preliminary, is the fact that you don't meet you're 7.8 acres short in the open space for the PUD. So I guess the concerns that I have is whether the commission, which we have the ability to do, wants to waive that. Is there enough open space, and have they committed to enough adjustments to get preliminary approval?
It's the upland, not the open space. We almost have 100 acres of open space, which is all the water.
I understand that, but you're looking at what the requirements are under the PUD open space area. So Zach, what is our ability on that?
So the planning commission may recommend and the township board may approve modification to the 30% requirement if it finds the site characteristics, surrounding natural features, and proposed design features and uses lend themselves to different open space area requirements. So you guys can recommend to the board as far as approving it for the zoning ordinance.
So the upland open space is basically what it's gonna be usable, right?
And so to provide context, the communities approach plan unit developments differently. Some have no criteria, and it's just propose to us what you think is a recognizable substantial benefit, and we'll weigh it. Others have clearly defined criteria, such as yours does. How to account for water and wetlands, everyone does a bit differently. Most folks don't give full credit for it because there's a balancing of you couldn't put a house in the lake. If you're Dutch, you could, but we're not Dutch here. So there's kind of a balance. Same thing for wetlands, that yes, you can fill some of them in, but it's not ideal. So we want to give you some credit for preserving it, but we don't want you to give you full credit as if it were a completely flat agricultural field. So there's no necessarily magic for where those percentages are. It's just what this community felt was best. And again, there are a couple of options as I'm scrolling through there to that section. It's a long section, so my apologies that I scroll through here. So one, as mentioned, is there's the opportunity to waive the requirement to have the full open space. Do you remember what section that is in there? It's 11, 10 or something.
It looks like K, under open space, K1, under section 11, article 11.
Okay, I'm still scrolling through there. There's also the opportunity for off-site. So if someone is short 10 acres or 20 acres for a large project, they could have 10 or 20 acres somewhere else. It's the fancy term of art is a non-contiguous PUD. Some communities don't allow them. Your zoning ordinance does. I scroll past it somewhere.
Can you explain that one more time, what you just said?
The non-contiguous?
Yeah.
So there are a couple of options. Is either you can provide all of the open space within the immediate contiguous boundaries. You could do the waiver to allow less if there are certain circumstances and conditions you find to be true. Or you could allow the applicant to have some of that open space somewhere else in the community. Some communities don't allow that. They say everything has to be contiguous and touching.
So
You
you're
guys,
saying what you just said, if he wanted to fill in 20 acres of wetlands, he could go buy 20 acres of wetlands 300 feet away, somewhere else where the water doesn't touch, and then that's a waive.
there's an opportunity to approve that, yes.
Well, it's just getting specific to the open space.
Right, but it's still.
But not necessarily wetland, that could be offland open space. So the open space is not necessarily just wetlands. But I don't, it's like saying, we're gonna build this development here, and then we didn't need all the open space, so we almost like make a little park area over here. It doesn't,
Yeah.
it doesn't make, like we said, some communities don't allow that at night.
One of the issues we wanted to see, which he has done on here, is to provide access to the areas for the open space to be accessible. So that was one of the pieces we were looking for, was to see that on here. So I appreciate that from that standpoint.
So here's the non-contiguous off-site open space may be permitted in satisfying these requirements, subject to the approval of the township board as follows. The off-site open space shall be located in Tyrone Township. The off-site open space shall be set aside in perpetuity and recorded in accordance with the requirements of section 11.02 K4 below, which means that it's going to remain protected in some manner. So it's not mandatory. You can't walk in and say we want off-site open space. It has to be approved.
So I guess my concern, Zach, I get back to the same question. We have the ability to waive the fact that they're 8 acres short of the amount of open space that's required.
Mm-hmm.
What's the criteria for waiving that?
I'm trying to pull that up right now. I should have brought the hard copy, but I was trying to be all fancy today.
Also, I think it goes to the benefit of this PUD. This PUD this should be a benefit.
Right.
You know, by achieving open space. If not, we just go back to this is what they can build with no any zoning approval, they can build this. You know, we determine this roughly what they can build. So is this a benefit from this?
You know, for some parallel plan piece, yeah. But I guess I would like him to explain that, so everybody's got on the same channel with what our ability to waive that is. Because that's in reality what they're asking for here. There's not enough open space in and of the design that they currently have, and they need us to waive that in order to even get preliminary approval.
Of the upland portion of
Right.
that, yeah. Okay.
Right.
We've definitely met the water, we've definitely met the wetland, it's the upland that we didn't quite meet.
But you can't get a preliminary without our waiver, basically, is what.
We can remove a couple lots and get it, but we, again,
Yeah.
try not to.
We started at 100 last, now they're down to.
Right, we're down to 88.
Like I said, I mean, this land's got its challenges. Some of the benefits that we're bringing in, adding costs, they're bringing sewer. You know, with the water and stuff like that, we're bringing sewer, we're doing half-acre lots, so we're not doing a flusher, we're doing something upscale to have something that goes, you know, with the community. We don't want it to be kind of like a.
Well, I think you came in with what, 142 originally on some number of.
Yes, we definitely packed as many as we could the first time, yes. And then again, we are paying 74 tax units on phase one.
How about the way you say 30% of the total land area of the portion of the site that is designated for residential use? It doesn't say the total area of the site, it says the portion of the site designated for residential use. And our calculation was based on the total site, on 156 acres. And you have those, like 80 acres, you know, of wetland, that's a nature preserve. We can argue that this is not designated for residential use.
Right.
So if we take those 80 acres out and we base our site on 75 acres, which is designated for residential use, then we won't be short of anything.
Because the other issues we have here are like the road issue, the,
Fire department.
yeah, the fire department. Those are all things that are things we don't control. We do control. the way-
Well, we just, you know, we
Yeah.
put in the request, and there's gonna be a report.
Yeah.
Come back.
As a subject, exactly.
Yeah. The waiver of the shortfall on the open space is what we do control.
Correct. Zach, when you listening to what Lena just mentioned as far as, you know, what percentage of the 158 acres, you know,
So we based the calculation on 156 acres, but out of those 156 acres, there are like 80 acres. They shouldn't be considered designated for residential use. If we take those out, then we'll be left to 75 or even 80 acres. If you base the calculations on those, we'll not be short of any upland or any.
I did these calcs when we first got this one, but I had a lot more time in my hands. I was gonna ask Ross that, has someone gone through all these calcs and recalculated all this? Because I did it before, I did all these calcs before, but that was in March. We've changed it a lot of times since then. It was really confusing. Has someone gone through all these calculations? I think we need to do that and determine it, because the way you bring it up, you know, there's different,
We just got these plans last week.
I know. So would that be on us to do?
Yeah, that would be.
Or
probably something
maybe Zach could help us,
Yeah.
or what do you think, Zach?
Yeah, that would be part of the full review.
All right,
In essence, if I'm reading you guys right, that we would probably wait for that full review before we make any determination on this. I don't wanna-
Well, we need
We
to
have
know
more.
that that's an accurate number.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, that's it. So Zach has to do his next stage review. I just don't wanna, you know, prolong it unless we're, I know Zach is looking for his answer there.
I could add something. If we had came and they were asked about, for example, the result of the fire department or things like that, would have been prepared, but if we just tried to get prepared, and I know he sent them last week, these things back. But again, there was probably so many items that did not come before. Because some of them are considered to be reviewed or decided on in the final. Right. So I just feel underprivileged here not to have at least, and you guys all know, preliminary site approval means nothing, but at least would put things in motion for us to continue and reach out to DEQ
Right.
and everyone else and get so many things because right now we're just in a stall. So it's not preliminary, I'm gonna go and build with the preliminary site review, I can't. So I just want to feel that we move one step further for me to invest more money and reach the DEQ and reach of everything else that I still have to do for the project.
We still don't have anything to hang our hat on to actually start submitting to everybody.
I mean, we thought, the only thing we sent was like late, but we thought we had everything that you guys had asked for through the planner. And now again, if we get a traffic study that's already done for the preliminary and the fire department, we cannot do the project without the fire department feeling safe about the roads, and we know that, and you guys know that.
Same thing with the traffic study, I mean, it's required final, not for preliminary. We're just looking for something to approve, to say, hey, yes, you guys are on the right path, come back with some final site plans and everybody else's approvals, that'd be awesome. But I can't go any further, and can't go anywhere unless we get some kind of approval, again, with conditions.
So essentially, the thing that they're looking for approval on is, the only thing that we can really approve in this concept is the waiver for the PUDs, but
That's
a
right.
lot of these issues are tied to that.
You have to determine the road, whether they can put a PUD on a public or a secondary road too. Don't forget that part.
But our determination is still on the waiver,
Yeah, that's,
and whether the 7.8 acres is correct or
Only, Kurt, if you look at 158 acres and take portion of that for the open space.
not. Okay.
But if you consider, like, it said almost 80 acres out of the water that should not be designated as residential, because obviously we cannot put houses on it, that brings you down to 80, and that percentage, we would not need any more waiver from you guys to get that open space requirement.
And I'm not even arguing that point, I just want to be sure 7.8 is what, if we're looking to waive that, is that the correct number? And we've had, how many iterations of this go through here?
Yes.
6, probably.
Russ, is it, I believe what he's saying, but is that a legitimate and true argument?
As far as the process, the
No, what
preliminary.
he's saying as far as.
the calculation.
Yeah,
Well,
just
change
took
the numbers.
Took the,
I mean, the way that I look at it, I think, yeah. I mean, that's a valid argument. A lot of it is submerged land, which is unusable. Unusable. If they were to do a boundary alignment or something, have less total area, then they would be required to have less open space. That's one of the things that the planning commission takes into consideration as far as the overall density. What's realistic? Is this meeting the intent of the PUD article? If you look at it in the sense that, yes, this open water, it's not open space as defined in our ordinance, but it's as good, better. I mean, that's up to the planning commission to determine what's sufficient for the project as a whole, if that makes sense.
so you're, if I'm hearing you, you're saying the intent is met.
Potentially. No, that's up to the planning
That's up to
commission.
us.
I have no say in that.
I've never gone through this before, so this is just trying to figure it out.
Me either. It's-
And I would suspicion, without having gone through the text, the fact that the zoning ordinance gives credit for submerged lands, it seems likely that the intent was to include that as the overall stuff, but I would have to dive in a bit more closely.
So what question becomes too for the board? If you look at the open space, if you have a flat land that's got no wetland or no ponds, lakes, whatever you want to consider that body of water, would it more pleasing to the people in the community and the people going to live there and the planning commission to see open water and wetlands, and the beautiful things about it being open, or just like an open area that you're gonna mow it and just have full of grass? Sometimes you can look at it from this aspect. again, this property's got its challenges. You know, some of the things that we're bringing in, trying to not do a cluster and change to do something, just as an investment, just to stick to homes. It's half an acre lots with some beautiful things to it, and we have sewer to protect even further the wetland and the body of water using sewer, because that's an added cost to the developer, as you guys all know.
Overstate that, you're gonna have runoff from yards.
Hold on, he's addressing the planning commission.
No, the way to look at it, you know, like, if those extra 80 acres, they were not part of the property, then our property will be conforming. So if we, because we own those extra 80 acres, it's not fair to be like a disadvantage, it should be an advantage. Because like if we split that property, take 80 acres and sell it to an adjacent neighbor, and then before doing our site plan, and the rest of the property will come to you, it will be 100% conforming, you know, as far as the open space and everything. So it's not fair because we own an extra 80 acres to work for our disadvantage. It should be like an advantage, not a disadvantage.
Well, he's my expert, so I'll wait for him to tell me.
We can do the math and use half the property, how many systems, space modifications.
It's stuff that he's, yeah, but where we are is, right, we're still trying to do preliminary. And the only thing we really control is what this open spaces and things, right? They're saying we got more than enough for the calculation, so it's 80 or short.
What's the next step? Do we do public comment on this one?
Well, actually, we still got erosion, but yeah, we have to go.
Okay, so we've got public.
Yeah, whether we are gonna make a determination or not, but I think we probably should wait till the next full review,
Yeah.
based on the latest information we have. We
I
don't
agree.
have that yet.
Now, side note on the agenda, it seems like, you know, the first one is don't discuss it, public comment, don't discuss it if it's on the agenda. Now it's on the agenda, we're talking about it. And then we're not gonna hear the public comment, we're not gonna hear it till down there.
Yeah.
Is there a way to change that for the next meeting, or?
We can allow people to speak.
Yeah,
we
we
can.
I would recommend we allow public comment for this one.
But we'll do that after.
Yeah. Wait till exactly.
Yeah.
You can start taking public comment now if you want. I'll listen while I'm reading.
Okay.
If they're in it, so.
Technically, we still have to do something with the brochure.
Yeah. You guys have any other questions for that? Urban?
So, yeah, so what's the direction, we're tabling it and,
Give them a list of additional plans.
yeah.
Well, pending, I think, pending Zach's full.
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Is what the plan is.
So, shall provide and maintain open space at a minimum of 30% of the total land area of the portion of the site that is designated for residential use. However, the planning commission may recommend and the township board may approve modifications of the 30% requirement if it finds that the site characteristics, surrounding natural features, and proposed design features and uses lend themselves to different open space area requirements. So basically, if you set it up as a findings, who's the ZBA member here? Your code. So you know how you go through your criteria, you have to find yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
The way that's set up is that if the planning commission finds all of those things to be true. Site characteristics, surrounding natural features, proposed design features and uses lend themselves to different open space area requirements. You would do a finding, or you could do a finding that we believe this is true because of this, or we believe this is not true because of this, and that goes as part of your recommendation to the township board. And they can look at your findings and say, we agree or we disagree with this one.
Well, we meet the 30%, right?
Correct, other than the upland.
Yeah, so the way
But the
it's...
30% is what we can waive?
Yes.
That's already met.
Well, so in order to get to the 30%, certain types, wetlands don't count the full percent. There's a maximum amount of wetlands that you can include towards that. And so when you add it up with those limitations, it doesn't get to there, because you might have, 40%, this isn't for here, but I'm making up a number, but you may have 40% of a site as wetlands, but you can't count that as your 40% of open space.
What percent do we have right now?
The total?
Well, you can only count so many wetlands.
Water can be 25% of max, wetlands can be 35% of max, and uplands have to be 40% to equal.
Max.
Yeah,
If that's a total allowable
of what I can use of each one to come up
divided
with
by the
30%.
entire site,
Correct.
which percent do we have right now?
We're actually higher than that, but again, I'm just having.
No, but they're usable. You can only use so much upland, wetland, and whatever.
Well, I have included all the water and I've included most of the wetlands, so as of now, I've got open space of 82.3 acres of what I'm saying is going to be my open space, which is half the property.
Okay, but is the shortfall your calculation on here?
Yes, that's also included on here.
Okay,
So we're a shortfall of 7.8 acres of uplands, but we've also dedicated more wetlands and water. And again, it's up to you guys to allow it to go as is, or tell us that you're not going to allow it.
so the upland area was short, but the other areas.
Yep. So if you work it out, 25% of wetlands counts. Well, there's a 25% max that you can do. There's a 35% max of wetlands. So it's not that you have to have 40% uplands, but you need to have at least 40% uplands. You can have it all uplands if you have that field in the middle of nowhere. But the math does generally look accurate. It seems similar to what it has been before. I remember the 7.81 acres previously. So the math does appear to be accurate, just from my quick glance and recollection.
Okay. So the planning commission could grant preliminary approval and waive the shortfall on the upland of 7.81 acres.
Yes.
Okay. And again, preliminary approval is not final approval. It simply allows the continuation of the process of the applicant to get permits, to verify DEQ,
Actual
fire,
boring and.
the
Test
road
wells and everything else
commission,
that needs to
the drain commission.
Correct.
Anybody else I missed, I'm sorry. Yeah,
And the fire department.
and Eagle.
Wait till full review from Zach, or does the planning commission feel? That's the direction.
Well, if there were any of those things that this body feels particularly strong on, I think you'd mentioned showing the adjacent buildings. It'd be good to provide some guidance here. Just the turnaround was way too quick for me to get the full review.
Yeah.
silver car, but it's not the stainless steel that I could hook a flux capacitor up to.
Not yet.
It will get 88.8 miles per hour.
So we have to waive the.
I get, we can talk to these numbers. I don't know. Maybe I'm doing it wrong or too, but to me,
They're short farther than that.
no, I just, so right now we need allowable open space needs to be 30% of the total. How much total allowable open space are in this calculation? Allowable. Is that
We need to have basically 47 acres of open space. That's what we need.
So do you, there's 11.74 submerged that we can count, right?
That we can count, correct?
Okay, and then the other one is wetland open space.
Yes.
How much are you including total?
We can't
Usable
account
site
for,
allowed 18.78?
so we
Or
can't account for
upland.
16.4 acres of wetland.
That's what we can allow.
That's what the table allows.
Right, and then the upland, what we can allow is what?
We needed 18.78.
Oh, you need,
I
okay.
needed 18.78.
Yeah, okay, I was gonna say,
So I needed 11.
so how much do you have?
We actually giving.
10.97 upland open space, right?
Yeah, 10.97, correct. But again, we have more than that, but detention basin areas, I have to take the area and only allow 25% of it usable towards open space. Because they're
Yeah,
detention
so
basins.
accounting for that, the allowed usable area for all three of those categories, we have 24.7% open space. The requirement says 30, so that's what we're.
As far as total area, yes, but then we have the,
Well,
The
to me, when it says,
restrictions on
there's a
what we
30% value in the ordinance, we may waive that, I wanna know what the result value is, right? I mean,
You guys are getting additional water and additional wetlands is what we're proposing to, basically, lack of a better word, donate to the open space.
That's like 24.3%. Yeah, that's like 24.3%. If we take the 7.8 acres, shortfall, we're not done from the total.
I got 24.7, but this,
Yeah, no, we do 24.5.
like I said, I think I.
I'm checking here, I think you can actually include, you have the opportunity to include up to 50% of stormwater. if certain
Is it
criteria-
50%? I read somewhere it was 25.
I think you can go up to 50 if certain criteria are done. So, but so my impression was it can't be just a hole in the ground, it has to be
Landscaped,
the fancy.
beautified,
kids are
yes.
doing.
It's in the, right in the first section, residential section there.
Is it there, okay.
Ross, question, on the one prior PUD in the township, was there any waiver of the open space requirement that you know?
that's before my time, I'd have to look into it. Let me just take a look at the overall, get a rough idea.
So while he's looking at that, was mentioned in K1, however, up to 50% of the area of stormwater basins which utilize best management practices to provide for an aesthetic site amenity may be considered to be open space at the discretion of the planning commission. So the default is 25%, but if it's a fancy detention basin that looks better than a pit in the ground, the planning commission and the township board could allow up to 50%.
Realistically, right now, I got 2.36 acres of detention area, so if we beautify them, I could use, instead of 25%, I got 50% of that. So instead of 0.6 acres, we're up to 1.2. So I just added 0.6 acres to my total calculation. So in a nutshell, we'd be 7.2 short, 7.8.
Yeah, what about this open space way up in the northeast corner? Is that counted as a calculations for upland?
That is counted in the uplands, yes.
Even though there's no access to it.
Not by walking, but by canoe, yes. Again, it's a nature preserve, it's an open space. Anyway, anybody's gonna get over there by canoe.
Will that be fenced over there so people know that that's part of the property?
We're not proposing it.
To do what?
Fence that next to Chris Weir.
We're not, I mean, like, honestly, even, like, when you enter the property from Runyon Lake going down, you got a pond on the left, and all next to it, all trees are part of the common area for Hills of Tyrone. It's not fenced in, you know what I mean? So,
How would I know that's open space?
oh, it probably could be in the Dodgeport Association. We can explain that to them, this is part of, yeah, everybody could use it. Definitely. I mean, this would be, you know.
Other than fencing, I mean, we could probably put some stakes or some kind of permanent metal posts in the ground to basically dedicate that area to.
Questions?
Well, otherwise we'll just have to pass on it. I don't know where else you want to go.
Do you want to get public comment?
Yeah, we will, I'll just see if we.
Will you take public comment before you decide to make a decision on this? Or are you gonna make the decision then?
There's already been a hearing on this, okay?
Legitimate question, because we might bring up something that you guys didn't realize.
Yes, thank you. I think we should take public comment, but that's my thought.
What are we gonna do with that? We table it.
My thought most likely is yes.
Table.
Table.
Yeah.
But let's.
I just want to be fair, yeah, absolutely.
You know, I.
Yep.
All right.
All right, so at this time, we'll take public comment regarding old business number 1, which is Lake Irvin Crossing preliminary PUD. If you'd like to speak, please come up.
No. My name is Jeff Cooper. I live at 11156 Runyon Lake Road, right there where it says open water, that piece of property. Yeah, where they got the arrow.
Yeah.
So I'll try to be quick and stay within my 3 minutes. Let's not mix words here. Shall is shall, and primary is primary. and secondary is secondary. And I've been in contact with the Livingston County. Runyon Lake Road is a local secondary road. PUD says primary, shall, right. Let's not mix words. I'll get off that. Next thing, we'll go to the map here. This open water right here, okay? For those of you that can't see in the back, right up there, this bigger property back here. This water drains down through here. Okay? From there, it's my belief that it goes to Runyon Lake. So, when you put all these here, these are gonna have to be built on pontoons. All this water is gonna gradually work its way through and end up in Runyon Lake. So when you develop all this, the runoff from that, yeah, you say it's gonna go into retention basins and all this other stuff, but it's eventually gonna end up to the south of Runyon Lake. Now, also, wetland. My understanding is you're not supposed to develop wetland. Okay, you can take some and give some here and there. You're gonna put a walkway right through a wetland. You're gonna put another walkway through a wetland. Another walkway through a wetland. We're developing wetlands now. Thought that wasn't supposed to happen. And like Garrett said, I've lived there for 7 years. I've been out there. I've walked around. It's all water. So, that's what I've got, at least for tonight. Thank you.
Is it proper and allowable for one person to be given somebody else's speaking time?
No, you have your own speaking time.
Okay. My name is Mike Stiff. I'm the president of the Home Owners Association for the Hills of Tyrone. That property is just to the north of this proposed PUD. This road, if you could please move this so that I can see a little bit more over here.
To the right there.
Yeah, if you could move it to the right, please.
It's a good view here.
These are people's homes. Those are people's backyards. He's talking about how he's going to add tax bases. There's your tax bases. These people own $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 homes. You go into their walkout basement, have a beer with them, have a pop, whatever. You know what you're looking at? That road he wants to put in there. So, Mr. Michaels, who I'm assuming, is he an attorney? A consultant, okay. He had a lot to say about why it's okay for you to bend the rules to say yes to somebody who's not meeting the rules. I was really disappointed that I didn't hear any advocation for why you should consider bolstering the rules, only accommodating not meeting the rules. Let me tell you the reasons why you should bolster the rules, or at least hesitate to lessen the rules. There are people that live just north of this proposed PUD. What he said about the factors that you can use to consider waiving the required open areas, of which the primary concern is uplands, because there sure as heck ain't much in this PUD. As a matter of fact, I would say this diagram is a gross and egregious misrepresentation of uplands. Uplands that are being claimed are not there. Walk the property. Where there is water, it ain't upland. Okay, but let's just say maybe there's a way to make what ain't upland, upland. When he was talking about the criteria upon which you can consider being accommodative of somebody who's not meeting the required percentage, he listed a number of very subjective things. There were benefit, there were some other words put in there. Those are appropriate considerations. I'm not saying they're not. What I would say is to those very subjective things would be, if you were to walk the neighborhoods to the north of this, if you would walk the neighborhoods all around the periphery of this PUD, it's hard for me to fathom that your conclusion would be that this PUD is a benefit to those existing neighborhoods. And those neighborhoods were built and those property lines were determined predicated on these very subjective things that we're asking to now redefine or to disregard so that somebody else's request can be accommodated. And I think that is egregiously in violation of the spirit that was there when these developments that are already existent were defined and their property lines were defined. So if you look, just to try and take some different words to explain what I'm talking about in terms of the character of this development and what it would do to the neighborhood, and that sure ought to be a consideration. You've got homes right here. Guess what's on the other side of these roads or homes? A road. So you're going to approve a development that goes right to the boundary, okay, 15 feet, whatever. If you have something within 15 feet of your property, you're going to sure think it's right on top of you. That's just human perception. So you're going to tell me these people with these homes are going to have a road along the back of their property as well as the front of their property where the existing resident, their access roads are at. And you have the additional things like this gentleman said. Runyon Lake Road is not a primary access road. There's a whole lot of bending over backwards for 80, 90%, whatever it is, maybe I'm off by a small digit percentage, of the homes proposed in this PUD need access off of Runyon Lake Road. So what is the point of a master plan? What is the point of zoning or whatever the right phrase is out? What's that?
You wrap up in a little bit here.
Okay, last thing. Okay. What is the point of determining whether a road's a primary or secondary, whatever those roads or words were, if it's not to abide by the restrictions associated with those designations? I just see way too many things that they need accommodation of in order to get approval, preliminary approval, that I think fail to consider a lot of very important things that ought to be considered.
Thank you.
I want to answer a question that one of the gentlemen brought up here a minute ago. And this is, it's going all over the whole state. Sewage discharges. September 23rd, 2021. This is Michigan Live. 3 sewage discharges hit Flint River in less than 2 hours. I'm not going to pick on it, but you said Genesee County was handling the sewage pretty well. None of these sewage treatment plants handle the sewage. And we keep dumping more into the systems. I mean, the sewage just got to end up somewhere and it just ends up in our lakes and our rivers. I'm not picking on you, but you weren't the only one that said Genesee's handling. Okay, that was just 3 in 2 hours. That's sad. Really sad. This isn't just wetlands. We can take a wetland out in the middle of a field, we can bury it and get another wetland somewhere else. Like Garrett said, I lived out here most of my life, and I lived on a farm down the road here. I hunted and trapped also. These are tributaries from lake to lake to lake. Start just at tips of Coal Lake. Goes to the Earth Farm over there, lake, comes across the road to Salt Lake, which I live on, goes through several little ponds and Urban Lake, then it comes to the Runyon Lake, then it goes on the highway, you guys know where else it goes. All the way up into Argentine. And then it turns into the Shiawassee River. These are tributaries. These swamps feed the fish. This isn't just a wetland. God made this thing, God created this stuff to clean the waters before they get to these lakes. To just bury these wetlands and just go out in the field, dig a hole, or buy a piece, no. I think this community is developed around a lot of little lakes. And we know a lot of these little lakes were just cottages at one time, which they've overbuilt on. Okay, so now we got parcels that aren't built on, so we got to do it right. Let's do it right. And lot sizes, I think we had this whole pack, and people said 88 maybe. And if you got a buried hole, you got to dig a hole, put sand in it so you can put a foundation on it, or put pylons in it. That's not, it's not right. I just think we have to protect this community more. We worry about, I don't think they should have me stop from developing it. I think the people told us we don't want that many, it's way too many homes. And like I said, the sewage, we're just adding to more problems. I know we got all these RUs, but we got money coming from the government, maybe we can use that to pay the RUs off. But I know, it seemed like very nice gentlemen, but I care about my community. and I care about the future. And I think there's, like he said, there's way too many questions into traffic. My God, I cannot believe the fire trucks and ambulance in the last couple of days, police cars. I mean, one fire truck came from Oakland County. I mean, Bill, you live on the lake over here now. I mean, this whole valley, this lake, it's all glacial. I mean, billions of years of just sediment, and I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, now I know they're going to preserve some of it, but when you gotta dig it out, fill it, and build a house now.
Thanks, Scott. All right.
My name is Jim Spore. I live on Running Lake, Tyrone Township. About 2 months ago, I sent a letter to the Planning Commission in care of Dan that took issue with the parallel plan that was dated 6/24. I counted about 25 non-conforming lots based on the setback from the structure to the designated wetland. I'm not sure I've seen a new parallel plan that would reduce that number from 77 to something less. Is there one? Have they done another parallel plan?
No, still 77 lots.
Okay. Well, if you took a look at the structures that you're showing on the parallel plan, about 25 do not meet the setback requirement. So the parallel plan is inconsistent. The other thing I'd like to bring up is what this gentleman mentioned before. And I sent another letter to the Planning Commission, and I think you probably have that copy. Regarding the PUD located so that it can be accessed from a paved county primary road. Again, that's an important issue. I think it's a very compelling issue and should be addressed before you approve a preliminary plan, because that's going to alter the number of lots significantly. On that same note, they say they'll do a traffic study, but the Mdot travel characteristics technical report dated August 8th, 2006 suggests about 8.54 trips per day for every household. There's 2 pages, one on page 10 of that report, the other on page 11. The other page suggests a 3-person household would generate 10.15 trips per day. So if you add up, I think I counted 52 lots in phase 1, is that correct?
47.
47. Multiply that by these numbers and you're getting over 400 trips per day on Runyon Lake Road. And everybody who lives in the area knows the condition of Runyon Lake Road right now, south of White Lake Road, all the way to Center Road. That could turn from White Lake Road north into the same mess. Thank you all for serving. Thank you for your diligence in computing all the open space. I haven't gotten into that, but I think that's another important issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else regarding Lake Urban Crossing?
Could you slide the map back over to where it was? The north.
Northeast.
East, yeah. Okay. My name is John Lees. I live right here. This will absolutely be an eyesore for me. This will be right next to my house. My neighbors and myself have spent a ton of money in our facility, our houses. We're in a great subdivision. My sub pump right now runs pretty much all the time. When you're going to put a road across there, you're basically going to dam that up. Now, I called the state to ask them about wetlands. So this area right here looks like it's dry. But I'm telling you what, my sub pump comes across, it drains across this way. This is really wetter than what it shows. The state tells me, you guys, once you okay it, it's out of their hands. So I'm in a conundrum here saying, well, wait a minute, if you guys aren't going to actually go out there and see, hey, is this really wetlands and how much of this are we really going to tear up? You guys are just going to say, well, right here, it's just this. It's not that big. It's just 2 or 3 inches. It's not that big. It's big. It's large. It's a huge undertaking to put a road in of this magnitude with lights, with sidewalks, with curbs. That's not what I just signed up for when I bought my piece of property and my neighbors did. I think you guys need to go out and take a look at it. This is a huge development, and for you not to look at it, to see, I think is a disservice to the community to realize what this is. This common property, nobody will ever use this. This is so much, I mean, it is not a true lake. I've lived there 5 years. It's not a true lake. It's really a wetlands area. So we need to treat it as something it is. And I agree with what they're saying. They're going to be hard pressed to get it to per for the houses. That's another issue. I don't care about that. I will tell you, I said on higher ground, I have issues. I have a retention pond here, goes across to here, and it drains down here. How is that going to be protected? That's our retention pond for our subdivision. How is that being protected? Tell me who's looking at that. Are you guys looking at that? Who's going to, I mean, that was put in there for a reason. Who's handling that now? That's all.
That retention, that outlet for that retention pond, that was brought up before, and.
So it's right here, it drains across here, and then it drains down here.
Ray, was that taken into account?
Yeah, we're taking it into account,
So
so we're bringing it through our site, yes.
That's why this is the wettest area right here.
12 inches ain't enough. I've got rope industrials out in my subdivision right now, you know, with 24-inch pipes that can't handle the water coming down to that area. I don't want to hear a 12-inch pipe.
Is there anybody else?
Damn.
All right.
Anybody else with public comment regarding the Lake Irvin HPV? All right, thanks. I don't know. That's it.
Well, I guess some thoughts on some
Close
of those.
public comments.
Okay. You know, I got Jim. He did bring this question up before about the parallel plan and the setbacks to wetland. I'm not sure that was the in that section was setback to wetlands or was it open water?
Open water.
So, and I just want to make sure because you know I did take some time and went through and try to listen to these. We're hearing the same type of things. We gotta. I feel like we need to resolve them or you know let the public know how that was addressed. So as far as that one, that's what I did read. Is that true? The setback
To water's edge.
to water's edge.
There is not a wetland setback. It is
So-
to water's edge.
That's
The high mark and the low mark.
Yeah, it's the wording is the ordinary high water mark.
High water mark.
Which is where the water's at the top of the dam right now.
And then as far as the outlet, the drainage pond outlet, I mean, that was taken into account, and to me, that should, you know, would be more. part
The
of
neighbors to the north?
The township engineers drainage, you know, just like DeRocher, a drainage engineer is gonna study this.
Correct, yeah, but
So,
then again,
but you took into account and you.
we're gonna bring it through our site, and yes.
Okay.
Because it's going there right now, I can't block it off. I have to bring it through our site.
That's okay.
Thanks, John. Table it or?
If I can try to address it a little bit. So
Yeah.
zoning ordinances are a very interesting thing where they try to balance competing interests and competing rights. So I'm going to pick on Houston a little bit where they don't have zoning. They have 200 pages of sign code, but no zoning. And so there you have residential houses with amusement parks behind it. Literally, you can look out your backyard across the fence to a roller coaster. Now, you can't scream after 10 o'clock because you violate the noise ordinance, but you can't do it. So the balancing of rights is the tricky edge that zoning ordinances try to live on. And where that line goes of how many rights you get versus how many rights you give up to get those varies from community to community and from time to time. So it's very natural to have these competing interests. Some of the specific comments. I want to make sure everyone is clear that the question isn't whether or not the property can be developed, because it could be by right developed like this, or very close to this. The question is whether or not it meets the criteria for planned unit development. So, planned unit development is a tool that's enabled through the Zoning Enabling Act, which is what gives local units of government the ability to do zoning. And the idea, it's from very early in zoning times where they realized that there would be cases where people wanted to do something that was better than what the regular zoning allowed, but they couldn't. So, but you can't receive a variance because there's no practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship. But everyone kind of agrees what you're trying to do is a benefit to the people who are going to use it in the community. So there are criteria, you guys have it hardwired in, here are things that you have to do in order to qualify as a PUD. And part of the carrot for that is that by doing these additional things that you wouldn't be required to do as a by right development, you get some flexibility. So for example, by preserving open space, whether it's wetlands or drylands or lakes, there's a recognition that that's going to mean the lots themselves have to get smaller. And so the benefit could be argued that now there aren't going to be people mowing into the wetlands constantly because it's common space that's protected. So you get to make smaller lots or smaller setbacks. So that it is balancing, there is a lot of discretionary elements into it. It is still a bit of a new thing in Tyrone Township. This would only be the second, but there are a lot of communities where almost everything is a planned unit development, either by design or just because the regular zoning doesn't work. Let's see. Oh, there was a question about wetlands. My understanding is I'm not a wetland consultant, nor do I even play one on television, but my understanding from folks who are smarter than myself is that there are 3 criteria in order to consider an area wetland. One is the presence of water, the other is the type of soil, and the third is plants that are growing there. And my understanding from the smarter folks is that you need to have 2 of those 3 present. And I'm not sure if you caught this, but when a wetland delineation person goes out there, they're walking the soil and they usually drop a pink flag wherever the boundary is. And so that's where they determine where it is. Now, wetlands can be dynamic. For those of you who don't know, I'm on the Dexter City Council, and we're putting in lots of trail systems there, including one through an old mill pond. And we had a wetland delineation done, and it was like, oh my God, the entire trail is going through wetlands. It's going to be expensive because the whole thing is going to have to be boardwalk. 5 years later, we came back, and the wetland had receded. So wetlands are dynamic. My understanding is that this wetland delineation was done by folks who know what they're doing and surveyors who went out there and did that. Let's see. I think those were the big ones. But if there are any others, I'd like to be able to share at least some perspective for the Planning Commission and members of the public.
Comments?
With the impact of the traffic and the potential impact to wetlands and the ecosystem in general, I personally think it's too many lots, and I'm not prepared to recommend anything for to go beyond the open space requirements. That maybe that could be a give and take and kind of negotiate.
Then we went from 100 lots to doing a parallel plan to get 88, now it's too many lots still. We've done all the math, we've done everything you guys wanted.
Like I said, a lot of that data that what I'm basing this on is traffic information, the impacts to the ecosystem and all that, but we haven't done any of those studies in the soil, in the existing soil. So without that information, in addition to the traffic on the primary road, I think that's which is not a primary road. So. That's my thoughts. Anyone else have thoughts on that?
That's what, anybody have any other comments regarding what John said? Open space.
Well, I'm assuming the road commission can tell you whether it's a primary or secondary.
Well, yeah.
We know that. I'm just saying that the intent of that is to, to put a development of this size onto a primary road. Those roads have, different funding. They're gonna be, the surface of the road's gonna be in a better condition. The clear zone's gonna be better.
For the PUD, right?
Yep.
But if he did the parallel plan, there wouldn't be an issue.
I
I just
get
want to be
that. I
that
get
correct.
that.
That's just, okay.
In the parallel plan, how many lots are on in phase one?
There's actually
one
more.
There's one more?
There's more.
Once again, I think that would,
Hey,
152?
what's this half a mile PVC 23?
I mean,
That nothing to do with.
There's 52 on the parallel plan.
This is the area.
On the
second one,
The
parallel plan
And a
is-
half mile, 23.
that's where they can
Technically,
build.
within
Now,
a half
do I think
mile.
that's a great design? There seems to be a lot of,
I'm saying the parallel plan, by going to the PUD, we cut it from 52 to 46.
in that one entrance. Okay.
Prepared to make a motion, or we should table this? The decision for everybody.
No, I just think that there could be some negotiation on the PUD, on the open space requirements. And, maybe some of these lots that, are kind of brought up is not that buildable. There's some upland on it. So you make that open space, and maybe you get closer to the open space.
John, let me ask you this. Do you
Yes.
guys all believe this is a challenging area to build on?
Yeah, I do believe it.
Sure.
I think it's a challenging area to build this many houses on.
Okay, I mean, when we did minimum half an acre lots, and we went down from over 100 down to 88.
Right.
Every time we came back, you wanted to constrain the parallel plan, we spent so much time and effort. And it seems like every time we come, we thought we're getting closer, something else comes up. And I know, these are concerns, they're all valid concerns.
Yeah.
This land, most of the time has never been developed because of its challenges. And one of the main challenge was Runyon Lake entrance did not have enough right of way. It was like 55 and they needed 66 to get into the road like this. And that's what Livingston County had indicated. So we solved that thing, we tried to develop it. At that time, there was only 74 acres on that part. So when you add the 60 acres that we from White Lake, that would give the whole property almost 158. Livingston County allotted 74 RUs to that person there, and he ended up losing it because at the time, he tried to sell it, and he was limited, he could not get enough, right away from that road because it was 55 into Runyon Lake versus
We needed
66.
66, right?
We need 66. So when we solved that,
Yeah.
Livingston County allotted 74 RUs to this, and I
You
own
guys,
74
yes.
RUs.
That's
You
Tyrone
guys.
Township.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Yeah,
Township,
Tyrone
yeah,
Township.
township.
And I own, besides the land, 74 RUs because at the time, they said every lot should be like an acre. To make a long story short, again, set aside, I used to live in the hills of Tyrone. Literally, when the gentleman was talking, I used to live right next door to this gentleman in the cul-de-sac. There were so many things they had to bring through the easement to the sewer to bring it to the hills of Tyrone. So all these things has its challenges, and that's what I'm saying. If I have 160 acres, I would like to build 300 houses. But there's a lot of water, a lot of challenges to this property, and we're almost kind of like so on one part, I'm not asking for something extra and beyond. What I'm asking with the challenge of the property now that it can be developed, we all know we cannot all fill it up. And we all know if you have a flat piece of land, you have way more open space than you have on the water. the characteristic of that thing, and when people live there building, you know, they have nice home in Henderson Tyrone, this is gonna be something at least to say as similar in value. So just because somebody doesn't want construction in the backyard, they could have bought it, they left it open, they could buy the whole 160 acres, I'll sell it. But again, there's so much challenges, we're so much deep into investing, because every time I meet with the planning commission, I got more requirements and all this together.
I get that. That's why I want to put it out there right now, what my feelings are. Because I don't want to say, let's just table it again.
Sure.
Then you don't come, you know, I think it should be, okay, you got 88, I think it should be more like 80. And you take some of those lots, some of that is upland, and.
I mean, we're talking about $60,000 a lot.
Well,
$600,000.
So I'm just-
bought it for?
Because I'll buy it.
And I get that.
You can ask me this beyond the thing, and unless you just want to say like, you know, I've just been sitting quiet here. So I understand, John.
So you're asking to go, to bend the rules on the open space requirement on the upland.
Look at it this
It's
way.
permitted in the zoning ordinance.
I
though,
get
John.
that.
And you guys can pass, I'm not asking you to pass, I'm not asking you to do something you're not comfortable with. But like Zach had explained, it's if there's a lot of water, a lot of challenge to that land, you could use this as an excuse to bend the rules and do something like this. So it's not something.
And I would be comfortable with that, well, like I said, and a compromise. You're 8 acres short on it right now. And I think some of these lots that we presented as challenges, right, you know, with wetlands on them, and, you know, so I think we're taking some of those lots that were maybe not the best developed, and maybe converting that to open space, and achieving closer to the goal in the ordinance.
I understand.
Which is 88 lots per the parallel plan, I mean,
Sure.
that's why.
That's a maximum, and
Okay.
that's if you get a bonus on all the other stuff, right? So
And which we have openly said we'll do.
and you met everything we have, or,
Just to
your
show
percentages
people
for each.
all along. But again, it's your decision to allow that exception. Again, it's who's to interpret. Like Lena was saying, if you look at the buildable land, you know, water you cannot build on it. So if you come back to 80 acres, then do that percentage. We don't need anything from the
We
township.
could change the math and not include the whole 160 acres and just do 80 acres, and then we definitely meet the open space requirements. All we have to do is change the math and dedicate what's open space and what's not.
I got an idea, John.
Yeah.
Instead of 8, how about, and I'm just throwing this out there, but if you guys gave up 4 lots, 27 through 30, that would give the guys at Hills of Tyrone, take that out of their backyard, and it would cut down quite a bit of road that you
You're
guys.
talking about the prime lots that are over there by themselves though, too.
Oh, somebody else's lot.
That's just a thought, that's just, I'm just trying to.
Again, just,
Yeah.
I mean, we come in here with 100 or more lots, and every time
We
it's
moved to a different
one
phase of the meetings, and I thought it was something.
3 more less,
And each
4
people
more
got 3
less.
minutes.
Well, the applicant, if we ask questions, the applicant, they can answer.
We can talk.
Okay,
So,
okay, thank you.
I'm just trying to get this done for you guys.
And we are too, I mean, we've come in here so far, 6 times, and every time it's a couple more less lots, Do the parallel plan, and do the bonuses, and we'll give you what it comes out
And
to.
it's all previous discussions that would not necessarily bend the rule. They will consider it, provided the challenge of that, and provided we're doing.
money for you guys.
Yeah, hold on.
They're not the government, they just can't print it and just give it out to everyone for free. Someone's gotta make a profit.
I mean, we're not doing this to break even, there's challenges involved, there's definitely more money to be spent on here because of all
This
this.
is a nature preserve. You're trying to develop a nature preserve. That's the point. It's not about the road, it's not about Running Lake Road, it's not about White Lake Road. This is a preserve.
Yeah.
That is what we're talking about. It's what he purchased. This isn't,
Motion, if we can.
that's,
Garrett, I get that, but, well, the way that we gotta look at it is, this, on page 9, this is where they can go.
Yeah.
With the current zoning orders. Right now, they're proposing the PUD and asking for some bending the rules to get there. So they could just, Ross, what would it take for them to build their P9, sheet on P9, the parallel plan? I mean, that's essentially, current zoning here is, well, they would have to get a zoning amendment for the west phase, because that's the current zoning is RE, but in the master plan is R1, R2. So
It would be a rezoning of a site condo.
Yeah, so I get that, but it's, you know, they have a right to develop it. But I think pushing those limits on the number of houses and the locations with the wetlands, I think it's pushing it too far.
Well, you either have to table it or.
Yes.
Table it, that's fine.
I don't. Yeah, so someone will make.
Yeah, we've asked
We
for.
just got these new plans, we haven't really had enough time to dive deep into it, Zach hasn't had a chance to formalize the review of it.
There is, but the commission has to decide. I can't do that for you.
It's not to say that you can't provide some additional direction based on, you know, some of the
Yeah.
comments, some of the discussion that has been had.
If I may ask of the commissioners, I'm curious if, so along White Lake Road, there are several larger lots, 87 and 88. Those could be smaller. Would it be more comfortable as part of the review, for example, a couple of the lots from phase 1 were instead placed there? So for example, 87 and 88 were 4 lots instead of 2, and 2 lots came out of the top.
We're gonna have problems with the road commission getting driveway permits for those. We already had problems with the 2 that we got out there.
Well, there you go.
And again, I'm sure the hills of Tyrone went to the same stuff. There was wetlands through there that they had to fill, get roads through there and build sites, detention ponds. So it's no different from the hills of Tyrone. We're just building it 20 years later.
It's a lot different.
A lot different. You guys are shoving all the water on it. It's a lot different.
Yeah.
And it's a natural water course, it's not even a drain, it's a natural water course.
I'm not against your thoughts on the purposes. We can't deny this because we think they should show.
Well, the only determination I can make is whether.
What I'm saying is, we asked for it.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is, compared to the zoning. That is what the table, yeah. But what I'm saying is, we could make a motion to deny.
We should do something.
Steve, are you on? Yeah.
I don't want to make it myself. You can't make it.
You
we need a determination.
Yeah, how many trees?
You want to make the motion?
Hey, hold on.
I'm gonna move to table this, based on two issues. First is to determine the primary road issue with the PUD, and the parallel plan, and make it, basically come up with an answer for that. And the second is verify the calculation on the open space and the benefit to the community to basically calculate, whether it's based on the entire parcel or just the area that's being developed.
And what criteria for the waiver?
And the criteria that we would use to waive that, if it is, in fact, the 7.81 needs to be waived.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, passed it. Did you get that, Zach?
I think so.
All right. And move back to old business, item number 2, the Grocer special land use site plan amendment. Okay, so it has been moved and seconded to table old business, item number 2, Grocer special land use.
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
Kurt.
Kurt?
And John, second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, so old business, item number 2 has been tabled. So new business, item number 1.
Is there anybody here for Foster?
Yes. It's here, it's Foster Storage Condominium Special Land Use.
Andy left. He did.
So, I don't think this is the first time that this application has been to the planning commission.
Just introduction.
Yeah. Yes, so.
Did that do a review on this one? Okay.
It's an intro, we have that issue with setbacks.
Oh, yeah, it's got a review of setbacks. You should do an introduction on this one, right?
Yeah, so, I don't know if the applicant, if you'd like to just speak to it quickly and for the public and us.
Yeah, so it's a 10-acre parcel. It's,
Hold on.
It's a 10-acre parcel that sits on the corner of Fawcett and Old US 23. It is PCI, was converted over approximately 3 years ago. There was a proposed plan to put we were going to build a plant, our business plant there. We did not build then, and we moved up to the Fenton Industrial Park. So that's been vacant now for the last several years without any development. And so the proposed plan for this project is storage condos, 114 storage condos on the 10 acres. Those are condominiums that are actually owned by individuals. They're used for recreational vehicles. We're in a very big area for boats and RVs, and it gives a person an opportunity to own approximately 900 square feet. They're 20 by 45 foot each unit. They're Class A buildings. They're going to be done in a kind of a modern farmhouse style, white with black, with like a black fencing around it. So very, very nice, high-end units. And so that's the proposed plan that we have put forward for the property.
Thank you.
Anybody has any question?
The question I got is, so you're gonna sell these?
Yeah, they'll be individual units. So they are, the concept is storage condominiums. They are condominiums per se. They don't necessarily fall into a homeowner's condominium, but they are owned by the association of owners.
Okay, so what's to stop a business from going into them?
Well, businesses are not, our plan is not to have businesses in them at all. These are not business units. I would say that there probably could be businesses who would store some things there, who could come in the morning and leave. They cannot operate any type of businesses out of it, be it store frontage, be it meeting area, be it any of that. So that's not the proposed plan at all. I guess, technically, people could use it for storing of items, right? It's a storage unit per se, but not operating businesses out of it. It's not for business use.
Could someone sublet?
No, that would be in the bylaws. It's not a sublet type of arrangement.
Who's going to enforce the bylaws?
Well, the bylaws will be written by us, in the very beginning, and then the enforcement is done by all the members, actually. We will have a board that will be the board for the condominium association that will do the bylaws enforcement.
Okay, so have the bylaws been drawn up yet or anything?
They have not been drawn up yet.
Because that's one thing we'd like to see.
Sure, absolutely.
So currently, there's one of these similar up at Thompson Road. Are you
Yes.
familiar with it?
Yes.
Is that basically like you're talking?
We're gonna be a little higher end. Definitely gonna have more of an aesthetic appeal to it. Those are quite stale in look. These are definitely going to fit more of a modern approach to the units, much cleaner. We view this as really a community place in a way. I mean, this is a weekend, people have classic cars in, they'll open their doors. It's more of a community that's inside of it to take advantage of their lifestyle things, the things that they do in their lifestyle. That could be their RV, it could be their boats, it could be their cars. And it's just a way for people to have that storage space, but actually have a lifestyle that's part of what they have parked there.
What type of security is planned?
All fenced, all keypadded entrance into it, so there will be no entrance into the property by just anybody walking into the property.
Cameras?
Cameras will be on it, light lit as well, right? Each individual will have their own entrance pad for their own garage door, so no one will have the ability to enter their own space as well.
Will the owners be able to furnish the inside as they want?
Well, it's a good question, right? So that's not our proposed plan for it. We have rough in for bath, half bath, it's just a toilet and a sink, that's it. But beyond that, that would be, I guess, up to, maybe some direction from you guys. It is part of what happens in some of these, because it is, again, it's a bit of a lifestyle. It's a bit of people wanting to come and spend a little bit of time, in their space.
Well, our concern too would be, we're all for people coming and having a good time, but living in there is a whole nother story.
Oh, there's no, I understand that, Kurt. I mean, it's, I guess, no at all on the living. I mean, that would be in the bylaws. There is no living, there is no, you cannot, dwell in your space. I was more, there are some that put a small mezzanine up and put a television and a couch, so the buddies all come over. It's a little man cave, and they're kind of there for a couple hours watching a Michigan game, and they all take off. I mean, it's just those types of things. But no for living.
So will each of them have a separate electrical, in a building, so that if they want to have some sort of a furnace and a TV set and stuff like that, they can do that?
Each one will be individualized, yes. Each one will have their own electrical, yes.
Well, the only thing I've seen with these is people will park an RV in them, and they'll start to stay in the RV for the weekend. then they're restoring their car in there. And I just wonder how you're gonna stop that.
Well, that goes through the bylaws, right? I mean, that's really how the bylaws have to be written around that. So it is not these are strict portions of the bylaws that state that, there is no weekend staying in your RV, there is none of this. And then, of course, that becomes the policing of the association internally to say, this is, you're in violation of the bylaws. That state that you can't do this. But this is not the intent, this is not the approach that we want this, this development to have at all.
So this is like a M1 concourse, no racetrack.
A little bit, Garrett, maybe not, listen, I don't want to go that far. I don't want to go that far in.
I know where your head's at.
Yeah, but, what we're trying to create is, again, it is a lifestyle, it is a, it is a very higher end, appearance, so that people can feel like this is what they're doing in their spare time.
What do you propose they're going to sell for?
No, right around probably about $100,000 to $130,000 a piece.
What's the size of the unit?
They're about 900 square feet. They're 20 by 40.
Someone could buy more than one?
Yes, you could buy more than one, yes. There are units that are, as you can see in the middle section, there are units that can go back to back, so some would want them so they can pull extra vehicles through, Some would want them right next to each other, so it makes it more of a wider approach. So that does happen in these types of developments.
Have you had any engineering done on the hard surface? This seems like a lot of hard surface for the size of the detention basin.
Well, we've done preliminary, certainly on the topo side, right, that we have not gotten to where we're doing runoff on into the retention area. We have not.
Wasn't there an issue with DeRocher on discharging into the right-of-way? That looks like that.
Yeah, the engineer has to review that.
Okay, so that's release rate or something.
I guess one question I had, I know, to use this, if I went there and say my wife went, so then there's two vehicles that don't go in the storage unit, where would they go? I don't know if it's not specified on here, maybe it's coming down the road, but is there room for parking of those vehicles? I just wouldn't want to see them all on the side of Fawcett Road, something like that.
It's a great question, but that becomes part of the bylaws of how the condominium association, you're essentially allowed one vehicle at your spot, because that's, unless you have room internally inside of your unit to pull multiple vehicles that come in, but you would have the space that sits right in front of your door.
Okay.
For parking, for your parking. That would be it. We're not creating free space parking to have gatherings.
Yeah.
That's not the intent of the project. There are some projects out there in the country that do things like, they put an office, they put a big meeting area, they have space that's community space. It's not what we're proposing to do. We're not going to have anybody on site that's living on site. No one managing the site from a live-in perspective.
And another thing is, will there be signs anywhere on the property, like stating what it is, or is it going to be just the buildings?
Just really the buildings. I mean, the owners of the property will know that it's their property.
Yeah, absolutely. I just.
There will be clear.
It's the same thing goes with the fire marshal and everything for something like this. Like what if someone's got a drill in there and catches on fire?
So we want to make sure too that we don't have marijuana farms growing out there and a few other things. So
right.
I'm assuming you're going to prohibit that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, this is designed, and the intent of the association is that, right? It is for lifestyle. It is not for the businesses. It's not growing. It's not, So this is in a way, it's the association, the condominium association policing itself, right? That's their goal, and that's the objective of what we're creating. It's not loose. It's not meant to be loose. It's meant to be fairly tight to say, this is, set to be a lifestyle type of park.
I guess so. Okay, go ahead.
Ross, so what does it, take for this just site plan approval, because they already got the zoning.
It's a special land use.
Special land use,
So-
which includes site plan approval.
Correct. Site
Yeah,
plan
so
review
this
is a,
Preliminary.
So special land use is, storage units or something.
we don't have a specific special land use. That's when we had the subcommittee meeting. That's when the determination was made that it is similar enough to permitted uses in the zoning district of
Mini
well,
warehousing.
mini warehousing.
Mini warehouse.
It's similar enough to that is what the subcommittee determined.
And we still.
Zach, you haven't looked at this then, right?
Just very briefly, a couple of things that popped in my head were the applicant should start communicating with the fire department to determine whether or not the buildings will have to be sprinkled, how to ensure emergency access with the gate. So there are ways to do that, lock boxes or having it so that it'll automatically open with squelching of the horns. I haven't gotten too deep, but the PCI district does have architectural standards for buildings, so that would likely apply here. Let's see. There will likely need to be a bit more landscaping for screening, and especially on the western side, there should be more than one species there. A little thing that popped in my mind is the dumpster location. If that's intended to be dumped from a truck, that's probably a difficult turn as it's currently arranged.
By the way, we're debating that. We don't even really believe that that's something we may not want, quite frankly. The residents can take their trash home with them. I think
The owner's not the residents.
Well, the owner, I should say, the owner of the
I suspect the fire department is also going to be very keen about addressing the buildings or the units. They want to be able to get to things quickly, so have that in your mind, how the buildings might be numbered or addressed. When it will come in for preliminary site plan, it should be showing the utilities again, so we can check to make sure it isn't going to interfere with landscaping or the stormwater retention. And is this going to be on septic or hooked up to sewer?
Sewer.
Okay, so it'd be good to make sure that the sewer folks are okay with 144 half baths as part of this. It'll be a little more complicated. This is what would be called a condo building. So as described, there will have to be condo documents that come in, and they'll likely have to have some very specific language, like if these documents are approved in a certain manner, the township has to approve for those changes, and that the association or the condo is subject to township ordinances. And there also have to be specific plans outlined in the Condominium Act describing the individual units and general common elements. So it'll be a little more complex than a typical site plan. It'll be kind of like a site plan got together with a site condominium. It'll kind of feel like that, but not quite. So get yourself ready for that slight little wrinkle there. And also the sediment basin and the stormwater seemed a bit small just to my quick eyeball test, but that's something that will get sorted out. Those were my quick impressions.
Thanks, Matt.
Are you gonna have block walls between units?
I'm sorry?
Are you gonna have block firewalls between units?
No, there's not block firewall.
I bet they're gonna make you do 2,500 square foot or less.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it mandated yet in the state. So.
I don't, what's the E-height?
I'm sorry?
The E-height? The height of the building at the E?
I think it's 24 foot. $14-foot doors.
I guess the one question on the lighting aspect, is it gonna be just a light over basically each entry door? Or are you gonna have lights around the perimeter of the property? Curious.
It hasn't really been determined yet. I mean, we'll try to do more softer lights. There's no need to have the harshness of lighting in that complex. So Most of, anyone coming and going is gonna be from 8 or 9 in the morning till probably 7 or 8 o'clock at night, that's it. I mean, people aren't coming late at night to, get their motor home or anything like that, it's just not happening. So, we don't define the areas needing harsh light, bright lights. So, fairly simple lighting and more soft lights.
And I'd highly recommend also considering exterior lights activated by motion. What that does is it allows the constabulary to know if those lights are on, there's someone there, as opposed to if they're just on with timers.
I don't think we really, Rich, we probably don't want to have, 114 lights kind of on, all around.
Yeah, no, that's my question. As little as possible is
Right.
my personal opinion, but it doesn't mean that's the opinion of the board. This is why I asked.
So you're gonna be able to access this 24 hours a day, correct?
You'll be able to access it 24 hours a day. And I would say that 99.9% of the time, it's gonna shut down at 8, 9 o'clock at night. It's, no one's coming into their unit. Again, they're not used as, that type of storage, they're lifestyle storage, so it's, people aren't pulling their RVs out at midnight, 1 in the morning. And the usage is, a lot of times, and I've done a lot of reading and I've done a lot of studies on these, people, you may have 114 units, but, that one particular person may not use it for almost 2 months. They may just put their vehicle in there, and in wintertime, for example, classic cars, guys, they'll just, okay, turn the lights off. I'm not gonna get in here for 3 or 4 months. So you'll have a lot of that goes on as well. Snowbirds will kind of take off in come wintertime, and they pull an RV out and they're gone. They're gone for 4 or 5 months, and they come back. So that's kind of what happens in these types of units.
Your blueprint shows 10, is that correct?
I'm sorry?
10 of them?
10. There's different units, numbers, so there are 10 in some, and then there's...
Most have 12.
12. Yeah.
The top 2 have 10 and 8.
Yeah.
Questions? I think we pretty much.
Is there any kind of special approvals that we're looking for? Like, for example, in the outdoor storage, DeRocher, they wanted, okay, we're not gonna pave it, it's required to be paved, we want gravel. Is there any other?
So it was determined to be a similar use to mini warehousing, so.
So is there any requirements of mini warehousing that are not gonna be achieved with this?
It's too early to tell.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
I think we're
I just wanted to think about that now that we got you here, and we got.
There was some width issues, where I saw in the mini warehouses as it relates to one-way traffic or two-way traffic going through there, but a lot of that was related to service trucks and coming into the warehouses. I think with 50 feet of space, road space, we're giving a substantial amount of drive-through space, free space, and that's all asphalted space.
What about, Ross, doors facing Old 23, is that any kind of architectural or?
PCI is kind of weird when it comes to the aesthetics. I'd need to verify, but that sounds like it may be something. Now, I do believe, if I recall correctly, that can be waived if there's sufficient screening and or buffer. That would basically.
Yes, it says, many warehouse buildings must be oriented so that the open service bays do not face adjacent major thoroughfares or arterial roads unless screened by an adjoining lot, building, or screening in compliance with M3 above. And M3 site screening says the planning commission shall approve appropriate screening for the site consistent with one or more of the following options: 6-foot high masonry wall, chain link fence, and landscaping consistent with 2135.
So everything is proposed really facing inward. The only thing that is not is the units at the very end. those doors would face out, but everything else essentially faces into the complex.
See Zach's review, that would be good, and then,
Haven't really touched it because we're waiting on the
Understand,
ZBA.
There's really nothing we can do on this right now.
There's no other question.
I think that's all we can do is ask questions. We did.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I appreciate you staying, so we can get these answered.
Right.
There's some hands raised, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, and so this is this is the last agenda item, so we couldn't go to, call the public regarding this item.
Oh, I just had a question, if this would go to public hearing, that's all.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. Yes.
All right, I got it. I know zoning, I couldn't make the zoning meeting last night. Under the master plan, we set up setbacks.
Yeah.
And I think there's gonna be a future potential to have an exit ramp there. Because White Lake Road is atrocious. Center Road's getting terrible. We already see it with all the traffic from the construction. Sooner or later, they're going 3 lanes out here, they're gonna have to. So I mean, why they gave them an extra room for setbacks is beyond me. I mean, it's an intersection and it's on the highway. Sooner or later, it's gonna be developed into, but anyways, I think this is an accident waiting for a place to happen. I mean, he's got single doors, garage doors, and he said apartments. I mean, lifestyles, okay. You got people working midnights. Ours moves right across the street. There's another neighbor over there. I can foresee people out there with their radios on, blasting in there, or outside with their doors open, working out or banging on their cars. Bill brought it up. He's got a garage. He knows. These guys, they're going to work on their cars over there. They're going to have power. They're going to have machines. I mean, this isn't a storage unit. This is an apartment complex for your automobile. I mean, not to mention they're going to come in there and probably just stay a week or 2 in there. I mean, if somebody owns it down the road, it's got a company coming out and stay in my shed down the road. They got 900 square feet. I mean, who's going to say they can develop a kitchen in there? They got a bathroom. I mean, I can do my own electrical and plumbing. It will take me that long to put a countertop and water and hook it into the plumbing system and run some wires, and then I can live in there. It doesn't take much. The average Joe can do it. And I think, like he said, it's a man cave. I think you're going to have guys coming in and bringing people in there, partying. I think you're going to have potential for a lot of police action in there. And it's going to be each individual cell. They should be charging fire for each one. The fire stuff is $150 They don't get the same plan that they screwed up and gave the trailer park at $20 a trailer. But, I just think you got a big ball of wax down there. It's a lot different than, like I said, lifestyles, people work afternoons, they come roll up during the night, she's rushing, bang, bang, bang. You got no hours. There's no hours of service. They can just come and go as they please. I mean, you just told your grocer he's got time limits. You can't tell this guy he can be open 24/7. So, I mean, I just feel for the neighbors over there. I know Marge lives right there, and I talked to her about it the other day, and she said, well, no one's gonna listen to me, And she came. I'm proud of her. She came.
I don't want to say this.
Yeah, and she came. And but like I said, I never seen something like this. I just think I think just gonna use it for everything that's under the sun. And the storage unit would be fine. You gotta limit the hours. And I'm just really concerned about the future of that intersection there, that highway, and the setbacks. I don't think the setbacks should have been given to them. We set that up, setbacks along 23 for a reason. So, all right.
Thanks, Scott.
I have to say something.
Okay.
I live across the street from them. I thought it was just the stores. I didn't think there were going to be it's just like, it sounds like a campground. And, you know, I thought people would just store their stuff and leave. You know, I'm right actually across from the whole property is across from them. And it just seems like people would be coming and going, and I don't know. I just didn't think it could do something like that. I didn't know it was a lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah, and just another reminder that there will be public hearings on this, and there's more meetings to come. Yes, thank you. So, anybody else for public comment regarding this or any of the other items? Or anything?
Move adjourned.
So there's been a motion to adjourn, is there a second? All in favor?
Well, you guys want to be up above and beyond.
I have a question about master plan. He's got a workshop. Workshop on the gas. That's what I was sitting there for.
Oh,
I'm sorry, guys. What are you doing?
So, workshop Wednesday at 6. Third Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday.
It's going to be on the.
Yeah, so we have this regular meeting. Next Wednesday is probably
They don't really and they should just identify 15 years ago, because people there were a lot of Indians, those were the wealthy people, and they did not want to haul
I got one other one there.